You're listening to Fanfiction Reader, where stories come alive through sound. Sit back, relax, and enjoy the tale.
Chapter 181. There are only Targaryens here. Clay understands that it will definitely take a long time for the Martell family to suddenly identify with the Manderly family, which was once just an earl, and become the masters of the Seven Kingdoms. At the beginning of the Targaryens, no one agreed with them. When Aegon Targaryen delivered a message to the Seven Kingdoms on Dragonstone, no one bowed to him. So, what did the Conqueror do? Woolen cloth? Of course, as the Targaryen saying goes, the Conqueror brings blood and fire to his enemies. If you are not convinced, yes, then you choose death. There is no third way. As a result, the Storm King died on the battlefield and the ruler of the valley knelt down and surrendered. A raging battle completely cut off the bloodline of the Gardener family. The ruins of Harrenhal even buried the famous Black Heart King Harren. After this, the identity of the Targaryen rulers of the Seven Kingdoms became impregnable, because anyone who dared to challenge them was dead. Now, Clay is actually facing the same situation as Aegon Targaryen. The existence of the dragon has put the Manderly family on the road to independence from the northern noble system. It is not difficult to understand. Gallisos' current size is already at a stage where he cannot hide it at all. When he returns to Westeros, his existence will be known to the world sooner or later. Fortunately, there is Daenerys Targaryen as a natural shield, otherwise, the Manderly family might immediately stand against all the great nobles. The reason is simple. If you are given a giant dragon, what will you think? Aegon Targaryen, the Conqueror, has an outstanding record. What if you want to conquer us too? This is why Clay chose to land in Dorne instead of taking Daenerys and the 4,000 Unsullied directly back to White Harbor. In theory, that is Clay's home, and all personnel and materials are at hand. The place. Fortunately, this Prince Doran is just like Clay's impression. He is a wise ruler. The series of arrangements he made before leaving happened to keep up with the prince's channel, and this is how he came about. Not a bad start. That night, Clay and Daenerys, who had just settled in, were invited by Prince Doran to a quiet corner of the palace to have a meal with him. Clay knew that this meal was very important, so he was careful not to leave early. Not too late, got there on time. Dorne's food style is an independent one among the Seven Kingdoms. Because of the isolation of the geographical environment, the culture developed by the people on this land is different from anywhere else. Especially in the north, where Clay has lived for a long time, there are two extremes. The weather in the north is cold, so the people living there consume more energy and they prefer food with higher energy. But here in Dorne, low-calorie fruits occupy a large part of the table, and even the remaining dishes mostly use fruits as side dishes. It was already evening, and looking at the maids walking around like clouds, everyone knew that Prince Daeling had put a lot of thought into this dinner. Since the host was so gracious, there was really no need for the guests to refuse and be polite. Walking over with Daenerys, Prince Doran sat in a large chair, with several soft cushions supporting his body. His gout was very severe, but it was not such that he could not even eat. You too. I hope you like our food in Dorne. Prince Doran did not stand up, but raised his hand and said to Clay and Daenerys with a smile, "Indeed, I should have a taste of Dorne and thank His Highness for the hospitality." Clay took Daenerys to the seats reserved for them. There were more than 3 of them at this party: Illyria Sand and Prince Doran's eldest son Quentyn Martell the Elder, female Arya Martell. If Clay remembered correctly, there should be a younger son Tristan. He didn't know why he didn't show up, but it didn't matter, and Clay didn't ask anything. This is a different kind of family banquet, which shows how seriously the Martell family attaches importance to this banquet. The candles were lit, and the orange firelight swayed slightly in the sea breeze. After everyone was seated, the maids left. If they dared to hear a word from the rest of the meeting, it would be the end of their lives. Seeing that no one spoke, Prince Daeling took the lead in provoking the topic. He said, "Clay, forgive me for not calling you Your Majesty for the time being. After all, this is a bit sudden and the Martell family needs time to adapt." Clay nodded expressionlessly. He knew what Prince Doran meant, so he replied, "It doesn't matter. I think that calling this thing has no practical meaning. To put it into perspective, Targaryen is the one you want to support. After all, we have been married before. In the heart of His Highness, it is best for me to disappear as soon as possible, right? It's a pity that you don't have the ability to control dragons, otherwise you would have already done this, am I right?" Clay's words immediately brought the warm banquet to a halt. No one expected that Clay's words would be so straightforward, directly revealing the inner calculations of the Martell family. Prince Doran looked at Clay's deep eyes and sighed slightly. It would be pointless to argue at this time. This young Manderly was too sober and too domineering. These words directly pulled off the fig leaf of both parties. They are telling you clearly that I know what you think and I dare to come, so don't fool me again. Clay, you are right, you would think so in my position. Prince Dalan nodded, slowly leaned back in the chair, and remained silent. Understood, Your Highness, so I didn't do anything. Otherwise, this place would have been a sea of fire. The members of the Martell family had very bad expressions, but surprisingly no one dared to refute Clay's words. They all saw Galisos flying over Sunspear City, and they had no doubt that a dragon flame would come down from this place. Leave no one alive. At this time, Daenerys made a smooth move. Your Highness, I believe that you and your family will stand by my husband and me in this war. After all, we have a common goal, don't we? Daenerys used her distinctive voice to tell the terms that Clay had negotiated with Oberyn in her own words. After speaking, the faces of the Martell family members were visibly good-looking. A smile also appeared on Prince Dalan's face. He turned his gaze to Clay, who was indifferent, and said in a serious tone, If Daenerys says so, the Martells will stand behind the banners of Manderly and the Targaryens. Don't think that these Martells are stupid or naive. In fact, they have no choice. As a place with a smaller population than the North among the Seven Kingdoms, their war potential is extremely limited. Even if they join any party except Clay, what will they gain? By joining Renly's side, will Renly be at odds with the Lannister family? Dorne is not worth that much money, let alone territorial expansion. Renly's basic base is the Stormlands and the Reach. Join Stannis? What does that smelly rock promise? He only has a daughter. If she marries Dorne after Stannis dies in the future, will the Seven Iron Thrones surname be Baratheon or Martell? Therefore, following Clay and Daenerys is their best choice, but it requires a step. However, after hearing what Prince Doran said, Clay waved his hand, shook his head and said, At this stage, Dorne can only stand behind the Targaryen banner. The Manderly family has not yet come to the forefront. After we have discussed it here, please bear with it for a while, Your Highness. I will leave for the north, return to the Manderly family, and develop quietly until opportunities arise in the future. After all, as you can see, except for my dragon Galisos, the remaining dragons have not formed a fighting force. Even when Aegon conquered the Seven Kingdoms, he killed a dragon here in Dorne. We now have 4, so time is on our side. Moreover, the outcome between the 2 Baratheon brothers and the Lannister is still undecided. They are both strong men. It is difficult for us to take action. So, Your Highness, in the future, Dorne will raise the Targaryen flag. But it must stand firm to block possible attacks from the Seven Kingdoms. Clay's plan is actually not complicated, because a complicated plan means that there are extremely high risks in its execution. Prince Doran agreed very much with what Clay said, that is, time is on their side. The dragon grew up, day by day. Over at Astapor, the unsullied troops were sent in batches. After Clay, the king of the battlefield in the north, returned, he completed the integration of the power of the Manderly family, and Dorne began to prepare for war. When the crown fell to the ground from all the parties fighting for it at King's Landing and they were exhausted, then it would be the best time for Dorne to take revenge. Chapter 182 King of the North. That's no problem. Dorne's population is too small and it will be difficult to fight out, but there is no problem in defending this place. This is our home. The speaker was Quentyn Martell, the eldest son of Prince Doran. After all, he was full of blood. He was so excited by Clay's words that he swallowed a big piece of cake and immediately stood up to express his position. Clay smiled at him kindly and said nothing. According to the inheritance law of Dorne, if Prince Doran died one day, the person who would succeed the Prince of Dorne would not be his eldest son, but the eldest daughter Arya, who had never spoken. And Martell. She is the oldest of all Prince Doran's children, so she is the true heir. This heir has the appearance of a typical Dornish woman. Although she never spoke at the banquet and remained silent, Clay knew very well what kind of ambition this body of only 5 feet and 2 inches contained. The current political situation in Dorne is actually very interesting. Prince Doran was tortured by gout and could not handle government affairs quickly, so he lived in seclusion in the Water Gardens. Arya Martell, as the heir, nominally rules the overall situation in Dorne. But in fact, the person who is really in charge of the situation is Prince Oberyn of Dorne, who was left in Astapor by Clay. Now that he is not in Dorne, the power has returned to Prince Doran. Arya Martell has been it's just a mascot. Originally, this Arya Martell was used by the Martell family to marry Prince Viserys of the Targaryen family. However, as the hot golden water was poured on her head, Martell's expectations became bubble. And when they set their sights on Daenerys, the appearance of Clay frustrated their calculations. If it were anyone else, the Martell family might have to think about it. However, a male dragon king with a giant dragon has broken away from this category. The existence of this dragon king means infinite possibilities in the future. Now that the words were spoken, the dull atmosphere at the banquet naturally disappeared, and the guests and hosts began to enjoy the carefully prepared food. Dorne's diet uses a lot of chili peppers, but Daenerys has seldom eaten chili peppers since she was a child. She was immediately brought to tears and looked at Clay with a resentful look, but she still fought bravely. She stuck out her tongue and took a fruit plate. She would lose her composure if she continued to eat this food. At the banquet, Prince Doran asked Clay about the next arrangements in detail. Clay said that all 4,000 Unsullied would stay here as the direct guard of Queen Daenerys Targaryen. Prince Doran understood what Clay meant. He was planning not to show up at all and let Daenerys take his place and claim the throne in the north. The prince proposed that he would summon all the lords of Dorne to come to Sunspear and serve Her Majesty Queen Daenerys Targaryen. But there was a problem. What about Clay's Galisos? This is Clay's dragon. No one else is qualified to ride it, not even Daenerys. If Clay goes north, what will happen to this dragon? If you take it away, someone will definitely ask about it. Clay's answer to this was, Galisos is a smart guy. It knows what to do. I will keep it here. It can be Sunspear's backstop, but don't expect it to listen to your orders. Then you're going north like this? Prince Doran didn't quite understand why Clay was so courageous. People who really cherish their lives are often those who stand in high positions of power. Like Clay, as long as he endures for a few years and waits until all 4 dragons have become combat effective, these 7 who is his opponent? Prince Daelang understood that he didn't bring the dragon with him, but going alone like this really seemed a bit like not taking his own life seriously. Of course, without me as the heir, my old man will not be able to eat after a long time. Clay smiled. At this moment, a Dornishman wearing light armor broke into the banquet. Everyone except Clay and Daenerys seemed to know this person. After the man handed a small roll of paper to Arya Sand, who was sitting at the end, he bowed to Prince Doran and left in a hurry. Clay recognized a note of that size, a letter that could only be delivered by a raven. Arya Sand opened the note and took 10 seconds to read the contents of the letter. The expression on her pretty face changed slightly. She stood up directly, passed over Quentin and Arian, and handed the note directly to Prince Doran. The prince took the note with a strange look on his face. After reading it, his expression also became very strange. Under Clay's puzzled eyes, he handed the note in his hand to Clay again and said softly, Your Majesty Clay, you really have to go back to the north. What's wrong? Clay frowned and took the note. When he took a look at it, he was stunned. He saw this sentence written on it. Warden of the North, Eddard Stark died in Winterfell. His son Robb Stark claimed that this was a conspiracy of the Lannister family. He once again summoned all the vassals in the north and held a meeting in Winterfell. Calls himself King of the North. The Tully family of the Riverlands declares that the Tully family and all the nobles of the Riverlands swear allegiance to the King of the North, and the armies of the Riverlands families will fight for the King of the North. After seeing this news, Clay had only one big question mark in his mind. He had only been away for a few months. What happened in the north? Before he left, he noticed something was wrong with Ed Stark's condition, but at the time he thought it was a sign of serious injury. Didn't everything get better when they parted? Why did it suddenly hang up? Logically speaking, shouldn't it be easier for wounds to fester in the hot south? Why is it that everything is okay in the south, but all the people in the north are gone soon? Also, what's going on with this king in the north? Why did Robb insist that Eddard's death was caused by Lannister? Moreover, is there no food harvest in the north? Perhaps you have forgotten the clan language about the approaching winter, right? This unexpected situation left Clay very speechless. Not to mention the closing of the world line. Under his influence, Westeros now is completely different from what it was in history. He originally thought that he would return to the north, train his army, expand his fleet, recuperate, and then gather his strength to give Stannis a hard blow. He would take the opportunity to capture Dragonstone, completely control the east coast of the Narrow Sea, and complete Manderly. The independence of the family. Now, the war machine in the north has started rumbling again. The Manderly family, who are not prepared at all, has only one choice at this time, and that is to continue to play the role of the Stark family's good baby. Moreover, his sister Wilfield is still in the hands of the Stark family. If he wants to be independent, he has to find a way to get her back, which is difficult. This time the troops from the north were sent to the Riverlands, and their front line was directed at the Lannister family. If you look at it this way, it is equivalent to the current 7 kingdoms. One by one, except for the bottom of the valley, they are all on the same level as the Lannister family. State of war. Whether it is true or not, Clay wonders how lucky the Lannister family is to have the last laugh in the War of the Five Kings. What kind of protagonists are Daenerys and Jon Snow? Lannister's the Nest family, is it? Don't say anything and go back quickly. As long as you are here, who else dares to compete with you in this army? Clay was afraid that in his absence, one of the nobles leading the army would use his own army as consumables. After all, except himself, who would want to see the Manderly family being powerful and powerful. Also, this time they send troops, the Manderly family can't follow the previous indication that there are less than 2,000 people. The current family spans two places, with rich territory and a large population. Although the integration has not been completed and the actual ability to send troops is not good at all, who told you to occupy such a large area? It is your responsibility to send more troops. When the Frey family was here, they could raise 4,000 troops in the Twins. Even if the territory accepted by the Manderly family was less than half, considering the original strength of the family, the request for sending troops this time would still be this number. Can the old man agree? Clay was not sure. He had to return to the north immediately. No, he should go to the Twin City to meet the old man first. How to arrange this was very important. Chapter 183. Heading north to Yancheng Town. Clay has never been a person who procrastinates. Once he makes a decision, he will act immediately. To a certain extent, Daenerys is safer in Dorne alone than in Astapor, because the good lords of Slavers Bay do not understand the surname Targaryen, and in the land of Westeros the meaning represented above. Daenerys will be here to accept the noble lords of Dorne, large and small, and go to Sunspear to swear allegiance to her. Prince Doran told Clay that he should not worry that these vassals would refuse. The Martell family has strong control over Dorne. This is a family with a history as long as the Stark family. Some potential things precipitated by time will come into play at critical moments. When Princess Alia Martell died tragically, at the hands of the Lannister, the whole of Dorne shared the same hatred and demanded to continue fighting against the rebels to avenge Princess Alia. But Prince Doran chose to suppress this hatred because the power of Dorne as a country could not withstand the soldiers from the north. Hatred may increase morale, but war must also follow basic laws. The desperate contrast in strength made the Dornish people bury this hatred deep in their hearts, and it took root and sprouted. Now, it has become a towering tree that cannot be ignored in the heart. The raven sent by Prince Doran from Sunspear flew to every Dorne castle. When Targaryen's name appeared on the letter, all Dorne nobles knew that their prince had decided not to no more holding back. So, before Clay left, the families closest to Sunspear, the Talon family from Sol Hill and the Dart family from Lemon Grove, had all arrived. Clay ordered Galisos to fly around in the sky. The presence of the dragon was revealed to both families. There was no need for Clay to do the rest. He told Galisos to fly twice over Sunspear City if he had nothing to do. He didn't need to explain the reason to Galisos. After finally saying goodbye to Daenerys and the members of the Martell family, Clay boarded a merchant ship with the most ordinary sail and quickly headed north along the east coast of the strait. He decided to sail into the strait near Blackwater Bay to avoid Stannis' fleet, and then disembark from Crab Bay north of Crab Claw Peninsula. If he bypassed the entire valley and then landed at his own Biting Bay, he would be detour. The journey went smoothly. These sailors were sent to him by Prince Doran, and they were all experienced in the wind and waves. However, they would not wait for Clay. They would return south immediately after sending Clay to the shore. They didn't know Clay's identity. In fact, no one in Dorne except members of the Martell family knew that the owner of the blue gold dragon was not a Targaryen. The journey went smoothly, or extremely smoothly. In fact, Clay didn't even see a few ships. Stannis gathered all the ships he could mobilize. The remaining fishing boats, in front of the battleship-sized merchant ship on which Clay was riding, were just as delicate as girls. They would not block Clay's way. After all, wild dogs have the power to provoke tigers. But you also have to bear the price of death. Clay did not order the entry into Blackwater Bay, even though he did not see a warship flying the crowned stag with the burning crown. Stannis was now his enemy, although the enemy himself did not know this. After a long journey, Clay finally left the ship that had been with him for a long time and set foot on the land of the Riverlands. However, because he was used to the long bumps, he suddenly reached stable ground. Clay, on the other hand, didn't adapt. After trying hard to maintain a balance, Clay did not show any shyness in front of the crew behind him. In fact, these crew members did not know him, they just knew that he was a distinguished guest of Prince Doran, but no one knew how expensive this distinguished guest was. After letting them go back, Clay mounted a war horse pulled from the ship and walked northwest. The place where he landed was located east of Yancheng Town. The reason why he did not drive directly to Yancheng Town was just because he did not want to cause more trouble. I have cooperated with the princes of the Riverland for a period of time and met many people. After all, Yancheng Town is part of the Riverland, so it is better to be careful. It's not that Clay is afraid of meeting the people from the river. He's not afraid at all. Would a dragon be afraid of a sheep's direct gaze? But the problem is that the timing of his return is a bit sensitive. He went to Essos to open up trade routes for his family, and Daenerys Targaryen had just landed in Dorne, and he came back from the south. How much does this mean? It will make people talk. After all, the Manderly family is no longer what it used to be. Now, everything they say and do is under the eyes of countless people. It is not anyone's will to wish that they have problems. It is just human nature. Riding a horse, Clay arrived at the only hotel in Saltworks Town before nightfall. This place was not big, and it was the fiefdom of a wealthy knight in the Riverlands, Knight Quincy Cox. If Clay comes here with a clear identity, now, the master bedroom of the small castle in Salt Farm Town must be tidied up for Clay immediately, and there will be no room for any neglect. The general who led the armies of the North and the Riverlands to defeat the Lannister, and the young master of the Manderly family, this status was not comparable to that of a little knight like him, at least on this territory. Pushing open the door of the hotel, this time is a lively time. Although Yancheng Town is not big, what pub is not lively? The tavern was full of noise and few people noticed Clay. Clay was not wearing the aristocratic clothes with dense stitching and gold embroidery. Clay looked like a traveler in a hurry, with even mud on his face. Again, he didn't want to cause trouble. He threw a silver deer on the boss's counter. Almost as soon as the silver coin fell, the boss's big black-haired hand immediately held it under his palm. Clay is the eldest young master, and his daily expenses are all about gold dragons. But in fact, for ordinary civilians, the purchasing power of a silver deer is terrifyingly high. As for gold dragons, many people have never seen what a gold dragon looks like in their lives. Sample: give me a room where no one will disturb you. Also, prepare some food for me. Remember, try your best to get it. This thing will be yours. Clay said casually that he was not afraid of his boss playing tricks at all. As a demon hunter, he had many ways to solve problems, whether it was blood or not, as long as he wanted to. Okay. Thank you for your generosity, guest. Will this meal be delivered to your room, or will you dine in the hall? Don't worry, I will pick a good seat for you and make sure no one disturbs you. Those who can open a store here are more or less interested. Although Clay is dusty, the sword on his waist is particularly eye-catching, and his shot is a silver deer. All this information tells the boss that what is in front of him is young people are not to be trifled with. Let's eat here. By the way, find me a girl. How can we eat without a woman by our side? Okay, please come this way. The boss led Clay to a seat at the end of the hall. The so-called undisturbed seat was actually just a small partition made of wooden fence. It was almost a private room in another sense. After waiting for about 20 minutes, a tall woman with scantily clad clothes and a cheap scent came to Clay carrying a large plate. With one glance, Clay knew that this was the woman the boss had found for him, and also brought his own dinner tonight. Sir, let me serve you. A slightly hoarse voice came, and Clay pointed to the table and motioned for the other party to put down the plate. Sit down. Clay had no interest in letting the women here serve him. He had other reasons for ordering a woman. Knowing that the young man in front of him was not someone to be easily swayed by, and the woman didn't mind, she raised her lips and sat obediently in the chair opposite Clay. Some men like the obedient type. Although she hasn't been here long, she has learned a lot. She deliberately lowered her neckline, which was already too low, to show off half of her round mound. Clay took a look at it without hesitation. It's not bad. This woman must have enough nutrition. The size speaks for itself. However, Clay was not in the mood to be like the residents of Salt Farm Town, so he had no further ideas. Talk to me, has anything big happened in the Riverlands recently? When the woman saw Clay staring at her chest, she thought she had seduced this young man who looks to be only 20 years old, so she said charmingly, "What's the matter? Where are you from, sir? You're not from Yancheng Town, are you? Don't ask about me, otherwise the money I was supposed to reward you with will be gone." Okay, mysterious sir. I don't know, sir. What do you want to know specifically? I heard that the boy from the Stark family has become the king, and that we, the gentlemen of the Riverlands, have sworn allegiance to him? Yes, sir, Lord Tully's conscription order has arrived, and our Lord Knights from Salt Farm Town are also bringing troops to join us. Oh, please elaborate. Chapter 184. Please don't micromanage. As the saying goes, a man's mouth is a liar, but the woman in front of him can still get out some useful information as long as he is given money. So, the entire Riverland army is now near Riverrun? That's what I heard from the men in the town. The kings in the south are fighting in King's Landing and have no time to care about what's going on in the river. Therefore, Lord Edner ordered that everyone go to Riverrun. Went. The plump woman is quite proud. Men like to discuss these things about fighting and killing. She only knows these things from the mouths of these men. When Clay heard the news, he frowned. What was the river god of war doing? Your surname is not Chang. Please don't do anything. When he left the Riverlands, he specifically asked someone to stay at Harrenhal. Southgate, you don't want it now. Harrenhal does not have enough troops. Any attack from the south, as long as it is fast, can hit the twins with one stroke and knock down all the castles in the eastern part of the Riverlands. Fortunately, the forces of the other three kings are now restrained near King's Landing. Otherwise, to Clay, the defense line in the Riverlands is like a black thread in his memory. Isn't it just to seduce people and tear it apart violently? Clay half believed this woman's words. Clay didn't believe such a stupid operation. The staff around Edmure couldn't see it. Stupidity couldn't be contagious. The whole Riverrun was full of fools, right? Let's go back to Twin City first. The Manderly family's army belongs to the Northern Battle Order and is not within the recruitment scope of Riverrun City. Clay will go to see the old man first, and we will discuss the specific situation later. If Edmure Tully is really that stupid, then nothing can be done to let him lead the army this time. Now, for whatever reason, Robb Stark has put the title of King of the North on his head. The throne is not a tiger. A mountain can accommodate a male and a female. In this way, although the flag is to declare war against the Lannister family, there is only one throne, and it is impossible to expect Stannis and Renly to recognize Robb Stark as the King of the North without a fight. Possible. Robb Stark has no ambition to ascend the Iron Throne. Clay absolutely believes this. Based on Clay's understanding of Robb Stark, that kid actually wants to guard his own place in the North. Who of you? Don't bother me either. It is estimated that this time, he was forced into a hurry, and as a young man, he definitely couldn't refuse the temptation of the crown, so he became the King of the North. It is okay to become king, but for Robb Stark, the best opportunity is not now. After going south to help people deal with the Lannister, the two Baratheon brothers can rely on the northern border and the river. Given the huge size of Giandy, it is best to achieve maximum benefits before turning against them. However, Clay doesn't plan to tell Robert this. The Manderly family is destined to break away from the Northern Territory system, and this system is too powerful. The greater the resistance the Manderly family will receive by then, which is not in line with Clay's decision. Raise interests. After all, his last name is Manderly, right? After patiently listening to the woman pouring beans out of a bamboo tube, all the information about the Riverlands, Clay nodded. He had finished eating anyway, and it was really difficult for them to expect the town to provide any delicious food. It was just to fill his stomach. He would have to continue heading north tomorrow, so he stood up and walked towards his room upstairs. He did not stop the woman who was looking back and forth at Clay from following him, her eyes shining brightly. I didn't intend to teach her everything, but it would be very weird to turn her away directly. Let me ask, a hot-blooded young man ordered a woman with a good figure, but instead of doing anything serious, he asked such unimportant news. How can this not make people suspicious? Under the regretful and jealous eyes of all the drinkers, the woman followed Clay into the room. No one listened to the wall. Lone travelers who can afford to use a sword are usually ruthless characters. Only these common people who are rich in survival wisdom wouldn't be stupid about this kind of thing. As soon as she entered the door, the woman automatically locked the door. She was just about to show the mysterious guest what she thought was the most charming smile, and then she saw the young man raising his hand towards her. Hand. The green runes flashed and the room became completely silent. Clay used his own experience developing deaneries to describe a wonderful night for this woman, of course, in her dream. Clay left Salt Farm Town early the next morning. He wanted to get to Twin River City as soon as possible. His generous move would definitely arouse the covetousness of some greedy people without brains. If he left a little late, he might be stared at. Clay was not afraid of getting into trouble, but he didn't have the time to deal with it now. Running all the way, he quickly headed north along the King's Road, which has the best road conditions. Along the way, Clay saw many troops. However, these were small families. They should have gone south to the town of Earl Haraway first, and then along the river road to Riverrun. After the war subsided, this main road of the kingdom has regained some popularity. In addition to soldiers, you can occasionally see business travelers traveling back and forth. There is an unspoken rule among the noble lords among the 7 countries. As long as the supplies you pull are not directly if it's something that belongs to the enemy, then generally neither warring party will touch your goods. Everyone knows that the 7 kingdoms are so big. No matter who wins after the war, they will not be torn apart in the end. They will have to sit down and continue to engage in trade. If you do everything right now, it will not be easy in the future. After Clay passed roughly the middle of the Minju Mountains, he would no longer see armies of all sizes, because starting from here, it was already the territory of the Manderly family. 4 days later, Clay came to the Twin River City, a Twin River City where soldiers gathered. The old man transferred some family guards to the Twin City, and there were people among them who had met Clay, which saved Clay time to prove his identity. Surrounded by a group of family guards, Clay arrived at the castle on the west side of Twin City. The old man lives here now. As for why he doesn't live on the east side, then you have to ask why Clay was so ruthless at that time. The entire original Lord's Tower had been burned clean from the middle, and then half of it collapsed after a few rains. The old man had someone look at it, and they all said there was no possibility of repairing it, so it would be better to build a new one. Now that all the family's financial resources have been used by Clay, this kid, to build the army, there is no money left to do this. Therefore, the original Lord's Tower is left here, and no one is allowed to live in the surrounding area. We will talk about it one day when it collapses. The news of Clay's return was like a gust of wind, spreading throughout the Twin River City in an instant. Everyone knew that the young master had gone to Essos to open up new trade routes for his family, but now the order for war has been issued, and they are all on the battlefield. Veterans of the war know very well how important a good commander can be on the battlefield. Clay's return has given them, the veterans who have gathered, a reassurance. As for those newly recruited soldiers who didn't know what was going on before, the veterans will tell them about Lord Clay's presence on the battlefield. Glorious achievements. Boy, you've been away for several months. How's it going? Is everything done? Under the gaze of many people, the somewhat excited old man asked this question. Everyone thought he was asking about the trade route, but in fact only Clay and the old man knew what it meant. Well, it's very satisfactory. I have brought the visitors to Westeros. When this damn war stops and the time comes, our Manderly family will have another big development. Hearing Clay's words, everyone cheered and praised Clay for the benefits he brought to the family. Only the old man's face was stunned. The news of Daenerys becoming king of Dorne has not yet reached here. Meaning, this guy brought the last Targaryen to Westeros? Where? The old man's mind is a mess. Chapter 185 Strange Death Dang is the sound made by the collision of certain glassware. Tons, tons, tons. This was the sound of two people raising their necks and pouring heavily, their throats rolling. With a sigh of relief, Clay put down his half-empty wine bottle and the still usable tall tower of Twin City, stared at the birchwood roof, and finally felt the relaxation he had not seen for a long time. Opposite him, the old man, Earl Wyman, was the same way. When Clay left Westeros for Essos, the old man had actually been very worried, but he could not stop Clay. It is very clear that when the dragon is controlled by the Manderly family, the entire family has only one way to go, and that is to become stronger, stronger, and stronger again, until it surpasses everyone. This is a one-way road, but there is no chance to return, or even a chance to stop and rest. Fortunately, now that Clay is back, he has also brought him the answer he wants to hear most. The Targaryen family has completed a de facto marriage with the Manderly family, and the most worrying problem has been perfectly solved. Boy, tell me carefully, you and the Mad King's daughter are really… You understand. The old man made a gesture that every man could understand. Clay understood what the old man meant. In this era, arranged marriages between big nobles were so common that among 10 couples getting married, they were considered lucky to have 2 that were in love with each other. Under this general premise, the old man does not expect that there will be any bloody thing about whether you have to marry him or not. As long as Clay and Daenerys Targaryen complete the most critical step, it means that this will happen. The marriage is valid. To a certain extent, isn't marriage just a package that allows men and women to do things legally, and the offspring they produce also have legitimate interests? They are all men, and Clay is not a delicate prince raised in a palace. He has cut off many Lannister heads. How do you expect him to show any shyness about such a thing? Nodding bluntly, Clay answered the old man's question very calmly. Well, the taste of a Targaryen daughter is very good. Tisk, it sounds like I have slept with many women. Come on, your father is much better than you at this point. When that boy was your age, he was already a lot more successful. I didn't restrict you in this regard. It was your decision. Who should you blame? The old man had a raised beard and smelled strongly of alcohol. In this era, marriages were very early. Although Clay was far from the standard of a leftover man at his age, compared to some aristocratic young men, he was still considered slow. On the surface, he didn't even have a marriage contract. The only Frey family that had rumors of marriage with the young master of the Manderly family was personally exterminated by this young master Clay Manderly. He was really cruel. However, as Clay gets older day by day, the strength of the Manderly family is also increasing day by day. There are always some timid people who want to climb the high branches of the Manderly family and compete for the position of the future Manderly family mistress. After spanning 2 regions, the size and experience of the Manderly family far exceeds that of the average Earl family. Although it cannot keep up with the Guardian Duke family in charge of a territory, not everyone can open this mouth. In the north, Earl Wyman originally planned to send his granddaughter Wilfield there. The Duke and Duchess of the Stark family also agreed with his idea. This was a precursor to a marriage. Of course, the North had to take action. Use the position of a duchess to bind the increasingly powerful Manderly family. In this case, the North has no reason to marry their daughter to Clay again. It's not that they don't want to, but that they can't. If the eldest daughter is married off, the interests of the two families will really be highly tied. This has not been done in Westeros for thousands of years. The only remaining ones are the Boltons, who originally claimed to be the Red King, but were eventually stripped of their crown by Stark. Unfortunately, there is no suitable candidate for old skin. The north is gone, so only the south is left. However, the Tully family in the Riverlands has no suitable candidate. Edmure Tully himself is not married, and Lord Hoster Tully is not as old as Croton. There is nothing we can do about Lei Zhang's daughter. The remaining Three Rivers nobles all said that they were really not qualified to discuss this matter with the Manderly family. This was not a matter of marriage for other sons or daughters of the family, and there were not so many interests involved. This is the marriage of the heir of the family. In King's Landing, it's a question of who to choose as queen. If you don't blow your mind, it means everyone is civilized. Originally, Westeros was so big that there would always be someone suitable for Clay, but now it is a time of war, and the Riverlands and Stormlands are temporarily united together. It is impossible to marry Clay, a northerner. As for the Lannister, who do you expect Tywin to send? What kind of marriage is there for a husband who has Lannister blood on his hands? Michella? No matter how you plot against the little girl, she is only 10 years old. According to the concept of Westeros, it is not impossible, but a mysterious power makes Clay definitely refuse such a thing. And by the remaining women, by the gods, do you mean Cersei Lannister? It would be strange for the regicide not to fight with you. Winning a battle on the battlefield doesn't count. If you steal your own woman, don't be too ruthless in killing people, okay? Therefore, there is no one for Clay to get married now. It just so happens that it also blocks a lot of rumors for him. Nobles have no marriage contract after reaching a certain age, unless there are unexpected circumstances. This must mean that this family has big plans, without exception. Grandpa, what is the situation in the family now? I just came back from Dorne, and the information I learned is very complicated and disorganized. Clay didn't plan to talk about women with the old man anymore. He knew his old man's nature very well. If the conversation continued, the old man would probably have to discuss the posture and duration with him. It's not good, Clay. I think you should understand that this war is not a good thing for the family, even if you are an outstanding commander on the battlefield. The old man put away his ungrateful smile and his tone became serious. The current situation is indeed not good. Many things that the family was preparing to implement, but were being implemented, were forced to stop, supplies were transferred, and conscription was carried out again. I understand, Lord Ed died at the wrong time. The gods summoned him too early. I estimate that the entire northern border is actually not ready. Winter is approaching, and this last period of food is crucial. Yes, unless we, like our Manderly family, can rely on the sea for supplies, families in the interior must rely on their own food reserves, and Winterfell is no exception. But who can stop the young wolf lord from avenging his father? Clay shook his head and did not answer. This is an obvious thing. Ed Stark is dead. How did he die? Again, it's fine in the warm south where wounds can easily fester, but suddenly it doesn't work in Winterfell. It's impossible without a reasonable explanation. Boy, tell me, did Lord Eddard Stark really die at the hands of the Lannister? I remember that when I saw him in the Twins, he was in good spirits. The old man said hesitantly that he did not believe that Robb Stark would attack his father, but the strange death of Eddard Stark made him doubt it. Clay thought for a while, poured himself a glass of wine, took 2 sips, and said slowly, I don't care, Grandpa, I really don't care. In fact, the current situation is that Lord Eddard Stark is dead. He died at the hands of Lannister. He can only die at the hands of Lannister. Robb Stark is now put on the crown of the King of the North. Unless we disown him as the king, Eddard Stark must die at the hands of the Lannister, and we, too, troops must be sent to avenge King Robb Stark. Thunder exploded and Clay looked up at the gloomy sky. It was about to rain. With a long sigh, Earl Wyman filled himself a glass with half interest. After drinking it hard, he threw the cup away and muttered, it's really bullshit. Clay understands the old man's mood. The Manderly family has been following the Stark banner for thousands of years. Ed Stark's integrity is well known in the Seven Kingdoms, and his failure and even death have a hint of conspiracy. This is the greatest irony of his upright life, the thing he hates and despises the most, but it actually kills him, and there is nothing he can do about it. By the way, Clay, there are 2 things that may interest you. Do you want to listen to them? The old man seemed to have thought of something, raised his head, and said to Clay, am I interested? Grandpa, tell me. Remember when you came to Twin River City, someone ambushed our convoy transporting medicinal materials? Remember, what happened? After I accepted the Twin River City for a while, I discovered something interesting. The place where you found the ambush scene was next to the fiefdom of a young knight, right? Yes, there must be something wrong with that guy, but I didn't have the chance to dig into it later. It's not a problem, it's a big problem. I found out that not long after you left, that guy's entire family, including his manor, was ignited by a mysterious fire. Waiting for the Frey family to send when people went there, it was completely burnt to ashes and there was no one alive. Chapter 186 The tip of the iceberg died? Dead. Finally, he was dug out of the ruins and found something that could prove his identity. Clay played with the wine glass and showed a thoughtful look. This little knight who might be a participant in the ambush died at the wrong time just like Ed Stark. For a little knight like this, the fiefdom is actually a village, and their so-called castle is probably a 2- or 3-story wooden attic. It is unlikely to be made of stone, unless there is a good source of stone near the fiefdom. But even so, even if it is burned down, no one can escape. This unknown little family will have its bloodline cut off from now on. There is something wrong with this in itself. This is not burning cotton. The climate of the Riverland itself is humid. If there is a simple fire, no one can escape. It is not a completely closed environment. The pungent smoke will wake people up immediately. Is there any follow-up to this matter? No more. The whole place was burned to ashes. There's no way to check it. It's a small village with a small number of people. His castle is not in the village yet. It's in a separate location some distance outside the village. When the fire was discovered by sleeping villagers and they rushed over with people, the fire was already out of control. We had to wait for the fire to burn out before looking for someone to dig out from the ashes. The old man clicked his tongue. This clearly showed that there was a problem, but if he did it so cleanly that no problem could be found, then there would be no problem. Clay, I actually don't understand who has the ability to do such a thing under the eyes of the Frey family. Moreover, what is the purpose? There is no oil and water in that place. I have gone to see it myself. It's very simple. Someone doesn't want us to investigate this matter anymore. This is a warning to us. Moreover, I have to say that the destruction of the bodies and traces was very beautiful and very clean. When Clay said this, his tone was very calm. He already understood the ins and outs of this matter. Ian Frey, who had already been sent to the Seven Hells, had met that guy once when they went to investigate this matter together. Moreover, they were in a hurry at that time, and they had hastily arranged the scene, so there must be something left. Flaw. Clay noticed something was wrong at the time, but didn't show anything. It was impossible for these people to know that he had seen the problem. So, if something like this happened again, there was only one explanation. They were not here for Clay at all. In other words, the little knight's territory that I didn't have time to go to at that time might really have a big problem, so these people were so anxious to clean up the traces after Clay left. They know that Clay will definitely know about this matter in the end. Even if the Manderly family does not control the twins, Master Clay Manderly will definitely be able to find out this matter if he wants to. Interesting, Grandpa. Being able to do this without the Frey family being aware of it is not something that ordinary people can do. That is to say, this is a little knight. If the territory were bigger, it would not be what it is now. Situation. Clay remembered that the old man told him 2 interesting things, so he asked instead, I know this. I will pay attention to it when I have time. Grandpa, what is the second interesting thing you mentioned? The old man knew that Clay wanted to ask, and he definitely wanted to tell Clay about this matter, but this matter was a bit strange and he still hadn't figured it out clearly. He said, Clay, do you remember this kid Robb Stark? Oh, we should call him His Majesty Robb now. He has a sister. He has 2 sisters, one older and one younger. Which one do you want to say? The younger one's name is Arya Stark. I know, I saw a very wild little girl in Winterfell. Oh, by the way, I remember she disappeared when we returned north. Have you found her now? Clay suddenly remembered that the Stark family actually had a wild little wolf wandering outside. Thinking of this, Clay suddenly thought of the guy named Jacob H. Carr. No way, it hasn't been found yet. What I want to tell you is this. When our people took over the land of the Frey family, they arrived at a small village in the south. The local little nobles told us that in their land, dig up some of the buried bodies. These corpses were buried carelessly. When the farmers went to work in the fields, they dug them out because of the stench. These people were wearing armor from our northern army. To be precise, they were direwolf armor. As for that location, Robb never passed by it when he went south. Clay understood what the old man meant and blurted out, You mean, those are the personal guards who followed Ed Stark into King's Landing? The old man nodded. His grandson's thinking speed always satisfied him. Yes, I later contacted the members of the guards who were recuperating in Twin City and escaped from King's Landing City. Based on some characteristics, they recognized the identities of those people. Moreover, some of them were very sure that there were some of them responsible for the separation. The one who protects Arya Stark. Clay was stunned for a moment, and then his dark brows instantly furrowed. As the commander-in-chief of a large army in charge of a battlefield at that time, he knew very well the arrangements of the northern army at that time. It can be said that the place where the bones were found was quite far away from the main battlefield. At that time, they all judged that Arya Stark and her guards must have crossed the battlefield and walked north. It seems to be true now. But here comes the problem. At that time, all the armies were further south. The purpose of the confrontation between the two sides was to force the other side to retreat. How could these people who had fled the main battlefield be killed at this position? Did the locals do it? I thought so at first, but then I looked at the strength of the little knights. Judging from their careless appearance, I am sure that they are not capable of killing those northern warriors who have experienced hundreds of battles. Besides, after killing someone, why not steal the armor? Otherwise, what reason would they have to kill? Clay understood what the old man meant, which meant that it was definitely not done by these people, so the next question hit him directly in the face. Who did this? Also, where is Arya Stark? Don't think that a little girl is not important. Although she is small and inheritance has nothing to do with her, her presence can sometimes be very useful. In my memory, this was the case after Roose Bolton took over Winterfell. Bry. Not a Stark, not a Lannister, who could it be? Clay suddenly realized that he seemed to have overlooked a very key person, and an area that had always had a very low sense of existence, but was actually very powerful. What have you been doing in the valley during this time? In this place, if all wrong answers are eliminated, no matter how unreasonable the remaining answers are, they are the only correct answers. Grandpa, I suspect that Arya Stark is probably in the hands of the people in the valley now. Clay touched his chin and looked at his old man. The old man was not surprised when he heard this. He also had suspicions, but he never understood why. Although the Eyrie city controlled by Lysa Tully is now close to the Blood Gate, it is still an in-law's marriage, so there is no reason to attack a little girl like Arya Stark. Therefore, the old man has always been doubtful that it was Gyude who did this, because he can't understand the logic behind it at all. But Clay knows very well that there is a person who can do this. It has to be said that that guy tricked him in Winterfell, and he has not appeared in Clay's sight since then. Now that he is fine, he is probably the one who caused this incident. Whether it's Sansa or Arya, his ultimate goal is clear to Clay. The phrase chaos is a ladder expresses the true goal in his heart. Clay thought about the burning of the little knight just mentioned. He had a feeling that these things were inseparable from the people of the valley. If this was really the case, it would mean that the man behind the scenes had control over the valley. Stronger than he thought. This is not good news. The valley is close to Clay and the entire north. No one knows what they are going to do. Chapter 187 Return to Winterfell. Clay couldn't directly mention someone's name to the old man, because the logic here was confusing. There were some things. As a witness, Clay certainly knew that this guy was going to cause trouble, but for the old man, he couldn't understand Clay. Why are you so suspicious? Grandpa, I am sure that this matter must have been done by people from the valley. After Sir Brynden Tully left the Bloodgate, we will not be able to get information about the people entering and exiting the Bloodgate. And in this place, there are those who are capable of doing these things must be established elite troops, and there is no one else but Valley. Yes, I understand, but I don't understand. What are these people doing? What is Lysa Tully doing? Clay understood, but he was not going to explain to the old man what a love-minded woman is. He replied, Grandpa, we don't care why those people do what they do. There are too many people with abnormal brains in this world. If we have to understand the logic behind everyone's behavior, we will be exhausted. In this case, then we will do something. Be clear about our position in this matter. Positioning? What do you mean? The old man tasted the word and didn't quite understand what his grandson meant by telling him this. Grandpa, let's not consider the interests of the North now. We only consider the interests of the Manderly family. These valley people have not kidnapped Vera or Willfield. If they want to kidnap, just let them go. This is Stark's problem, not ours. Clay understood very well that if it weren't for his own existence, the Manderly family, under the leadership of the old man, would have been staunch loyalists to the Stark family. Even if Winterfell was lost and the family members were scattered, the old man had been planning to let the Stark family be separated. The Tucker family returns to Winterfell. Therefore, the old man now has a subconscious habit of thinking that if something goes wrong in the north, it is closely related to the Manderly family. This is wrong. Since the final backstab is inevitable, it is better to prepare in advance now. Grandparents and grandsons chatted for a long time, from Clay Dragon to Essos, finding deaneries, then reaching cooperation, completing the family marriage, then capturing Estapper, taking control of the Unsullied, and then the Iron Bank and Dorne Landing. For other nobles, this is the time when they are full of energy and work hard to practice their writing skills, but Clay has no chance to enjoy life at all. He wants to fight for a future for himself and his family. The old man told Clay that the family has now gathered more than 2,000 soldiers in Twin City, but they are not elite, and their training level can only be said to be average. This is normal. After all, a large part of these soldiers are the original Frey soldiers, but after being screened and beaten by the old man, they became loyal to the new masters, the Manderly family. The original Frey family actually preferred the theory of mass sea charge. One family can raise an army of 4,000 people. If they hope to adopt the route of elite soldiers, the cost will be sky high. Based on this situation, the old man recruited 2,000 people. He did not want any children or old people, but young and middle-aged people. Then he evened out some infantry equipment from the Manderly family's arsenal, plus the original Frey family's warehouse inventory, and finally, it is to complete the full-body armor of these people. The original kind of soldier holding a wooden shield and holding a spear was actually of little use on the battlefield. Clay was the commander of the cavalry, which gave him the opportunity to lead the infantry. He also preferred a small number of elites with higher overall quality. Legion. As for filling in the line, there are so many nobles in the north and the Riverlands, and there are always enough miscellaneous people who can pull them in. The Manderly family's army is to be the main force and cannot do this kind of thing. The Manderly family's army is waiting at the Twins, waiting for King Robb Stark's army to move south and then join the Northern Army. Although this part theoretically belongs to the Riverlands, it is now because of Manderly the line between the family and the north has been blurred. Grandpa, I should be able to gain control of part of the army this time, but if Robb Stark no longer divides the troops, then I have to listen to him. After all, he carries the crown, doesn't he? I understand. What about the White Harbor side? Do you want to continue with your previous arrangements? Continue, we must have a large fleet. I will put them to great use later. Grandpa, our clan language is Raging Sea and Raging Waves. Don't ignore the power of the sea. Okay, as long as you have an idea, that's it. You go to White Harbor first. I have ordered your Uncle Willis to prepare the army for you. This time it is all cavalry, 2,000 people, all for you, so that it will be easier for you later. Well, Robb Stark won't make it difficult for me now. Revenge is the first thing in the entire North and Riverlands right now, so they don't dare to touch me. Everything that needs to be said has been said, and the rest is all other things. Both Clay and the old man understand that this may be the last battle that the Manderly family will fight for the Stark family, which has been loyal to them for nearly 1,000 years. Early the next morning, Clay took a small team of guards and went straight to the port renovated by the Biting Bay family. After Biting Bay became the family's inland sea, the port connecting the two places already had the family's customs. Garrison fleet. By the time Clay crossed the Bite Bay and came to White Harbor, Robb Stark's king's orders also arrived at White Harbor. The meaning of the letter is very simple. Hurry up. Clay Manderly comes to Winterfell first. We can wait until we go south to talk about the army. There was no way to refuse this, since Clay was not completely secretive when he left. It seems that there are also eyes in the Twins that arrange Winterfell here. This matter may not necessarily be arranged by Robb Stark, but the appearance of this letter means that he acquiesced in the existence of this kind of thing. So Clay, who just drank some water and didn't even feel his butt was warm, could only continue to move towards Winterfell helplessly. The last time he came to Winterfell, he was just an unknown heir of White Harbor in the Seven Kingdoms, but now everyone in Winterfell knew what he was calling Clay Manderly for. This battle is obviously aimed at the Lannister in King's Landing, but the Lannister stays in King's Landing. If the Northerners want revenge, they have to take down King's Landing, but this is not easy. Moreover, when King's Landing was defeated, how could you let Renly and Stannis stand by and watch? Originally, before Robb Stark took the crown, there was still room for twists and turns in this matter. He directly told Renly and Stannis that I would be the vassal of whoever joins me in defeating King's Landing and killing the lion. That's it. But now, this possibility has been closed by Robb Stark himself. As a result, the enemies in this battle have changed from 1 to theoretically 3. The Northerners can go home and live their own lives, but neither Ly nor Stannis could tolerate the independence of the North and the Riverlands from the territory of the Seven Kingdoms. If nothing else, if this is agreed, look at the location between Harrenhal and King's Landing. If there is another war in the future, as long as an elite cavalry is stationed at Harrenhal, the two will gallop at full strength day and night, sparing no effort. In this case, you can rush directly to King's Landing City. Moreover, the independence of the Riverlands and the North means that land transportation between the Vale and King's Landing is cut off. Can the Vale still be expected to be loyal to the Iron Throne? The Baratheon family does not have dragons and cannot fly through the Blood Gate. Therefore, unless it reaches an extreme state, it is impossible for this kind of thing to happen, and Robb Stark, who has integrated the North and the Riverlands, has military strength that can compete with the three parties. Then the question will circle back, why should Stark take off the crown for Baratheon and swear allegiance to the Iron Throne? The final solution is to have to fight, and whoever is tougher will be the boss. This is the most intuitive result of the unconvincing bloodline. The claim has nothing to do with legal authority. What is fought on the battlefield is true. In the last 200 years of Targaryen's rule, nothing like this has ever happened, because Targaryen is equal to the throne. This concept has become a general rule in the Seven Kingdoms. The one who can sit on the throne can only be a Targaryen. Others are considered rebellious. It's still the same route, go north along the White Knife River and then to the King's Road. After passing Severn City, enter the city from the east gate of Winterfell. When the dusty Clay got off the horse, he was greeted by his old acquaintance Sir Roderick. The head coach of Winterfell looked much older, but his back was still straight. Thank the gods, Clay, you are finally here. Why did you go to Essos at this time? You don't know how angry His Majesty Robb was when he heard the news. This has nothing to do with me, sir. I didn't know that the gods would guide Lord Ed to leave us at this time. I thought the war was over, but who knew it had just begun. Chapter 188 Goodbye Robb Stark. Winterfell was much colder than last time. When he came last time, his breath was still white, but now, Clay suddenly realized this. Winter is coming, and this time it's not just empty talk. This sentence, that the Stark family has been chanting for thousands of years, has been playing a role. The Stark family's soldiers on duty recognized the figure walking towards them. They immediately raised their arms, saluted Clay, and said loudly, "Lord Clay, Winterfell welcomes you. His Majesty Robert and all the adults are in the hall, waiting for you." Are they all here, all of them? Yes, they are all here. The soldiers pushed open the heavy oak door. As the door panel slowly opened, the noise reached Clay's ears more and more clearly. It was like this in every gathering no matter where it was, but Clay hadn't felt it for a long time. Arrive! The howling air conditioning flowed from Clay's back, along with the pale sunlight, into the dim hall under the candlelight. This sudden light and chill made everyone look over, and when they recognized who the person was, the original noise disappeared. They stared at the young man who walked in slowly, without saying a word. Walking to the center of the hall, Clay looked around at the banquet scene. Long tables were surrounded and filled with baked food. People sitting on both sides were familiar faces from Clay. All the heads in the north were gathered together. Get together. Under the gaze of everyone, Clay looked at King Robb Stark, who was facing him, completely stripped of his childishness and with a full beard. He opened his arms and laughed. Everyone, I, Clay Manderly, am back. Why am I not welcome in Winterfell? The scene was completely silent for a moment, and then burst into laughter, and Robb Stark's tense face relaxed. As Clay said, there is no way that Winterfell will not welcome him. Clay Manderly. Come on, Clay, sit over here. Robb Stark pointed to a seat next to him, and Clay walked over with a smile. He noticed that his sister Wilfield was actually on the other side. Seeing Clay sitting down, the atmosphere at the scene instantly became lively again. Many of Clay's acquaintances from the south came over to drink with Clay. Clay also accepted all comers. This is the way men in the north greet each other. He has long been used to it. After taking a look at Robb Stark, Clay felt that this guy had changed quite a lot. When he last saw him, it would be more appropriate to say that he was a young man. But now, although his age has only increased a little, his whole personality has changed. The temperament has changed. The war going south and the tremendous pressure after his father's death made the former Robb Stark disappear. Sitting next to Clay is now the King of the North. Should I call you, Your Majesty Robert? Clay asked Robb with a smile. The latter looked a little unnatural when he heard this sentence. Unlike others, Clay knew a lot about him, and the relationship between the two was very good. Now his status has been improved, but he felt that it was cool for Clay to call him that. No, for the sake of this broken crown, it's okay to say what you mean. Do whatever you want in private, don't mind. Robb Stark twitched the corners of his lips, and then handed Clay a full glass of ale. Do you know, I am discussing business in Essos. Winter is coming. If we can successfully purchase food from Essos, the pressure on food in the winter will be much less. It's good for you. You just called me back. There is nothing I can do. My father left too suddenly. Maester Luwin said it was the Lannisters' fault. They pushed me to this position. This revenge must be avenged. There is no way. Robb Stark's face was a little sad. He actually knew that it was not appropriate to start a war now, but the general trend was forcing him to move forward. How is the grain harvest going? I've been going back and forth for several months, so it should be almost done, right? It's not bad, but there is still a small part that has not been harvested. It seems to be several months. but the real time left for the soldiers is actually not much time. A lot of the food is rotten, alas. There is no way. Let's find a way later. As long as there are no problems with your uncle's family and the food from the Riverlands can be transported to us, we should not be able to starve to death for a few people. At most, life will be a little harder. I hope so, but now we have to go south first. Only if we win the battle can we ensure the stability of the Riverlands. They don't have a natural barrier in the Gulf of Kalen. There is no danger to defend that place in the 4 battles. Hearing this, Clay thought of the current situation in the Riverlands. He smiled helplessly and reminded, Robert, I went from the Twins to White Harbor first and then to Winterfell. Let me remind you that your uncle Edmure Tully transferred all the garrison of Harrenhal, saying that we need to reorganize Riverrun City now. What? Isn't this stupid? Robb Stark was stunned. His father, who died with him, had little political ability, but he still had a lot of military talent. He immediately realized how stupid Edmure Tully's operation was. Are you sure? No one from Lord Hoster Tully or the other 3 Rivers nobles has any opinions? I'm sure I've checked with someone. Moreover, I estimate that Duke Hoster is in a very bad situation now, and Edmure has completely taken over the power of Riverrun. My uncle doesn't know how to fight at all. Come here. Send Sir Roderick over. Robb Stark shouted angrily. The soldiers who heard the king's order immediately ran over. The nobles who didn't know what was going on also looked over. Robb didn't have time to cover up and ordered directly, forget it, there's no need to let him come. Tell him to go to Maester Luwin immediately, and ask him to send the Raven to tell Riverrun to immediately send people to re-garrison Harrenhal. Once that place is occupied by others, it will cost $5 or $6. You can get it back at twice the price, go quickly. The soldier agreed and immediately turned around and left. The reason why he called Roderick many times was because now that Robb Stark is the king, many things cannot be conveyed by soldiers. Roderick, the head coach of Winterfell, is now the captain of the palace guard of the king in the north. After hearing Robb Stark's instructions, the nobles who were nearby also understood what was going on, and they all cursed Edmure for his stupid operation. This is the north, and it is a shame to think that southerners are inferior to northerners. It's traditional. Clay, we were all preparing to go south. The armies of each family have been stationed outside Winterfell. They will be leaving in the next 2 days. Who knew there was news that you had returned to White Harbor, so I am waiting here. You, Clay nodded. He didn't ask where the news came from. It was boring. Forcing Robb Stark to tell it would not be good for anyone at this juncture. Well, but, Robb, I have to ask you a question. What is the purpose of your trip south this time? You have to make it clear to me. Clay's tone was quite serious. He had to understand what Robb Stark was going to do, so that he could adjust his and Daenerys' subsequent actions based on this. After all, he had to be in the army all the time and didn't have any dragon come over. With such a long distance, it is still difficult for the 2 parties to link up. They can only ensure that there are no mistakes in the general direction. Now, the most important thing is to delay time. Needless to say, of course it is to avenge my father. Robb Stark said it was a matter of course, and Clay was quite speechless when he heard it. Robb, it was the Lannister who killed Lord Eddard, right? Yes, the evidence is conclusive. Then where are you going to take revenge? King's Landing? Casterly Rock? Go to King's Landing first. The Old Lion and Queen Cersei are both in King's Landing. Ah, my Lord Robb, what are you thinking about? How can you go to King's Landing and fight like this? Renly is also surrounding King's Landing now. You go and fight with him? Don't forget you are not the North now. Duke of Jing, you are the King of the North. Clay was helpless. He had to fight this battle, but he couldn't be so reckless, right? Do you really charge with someone else? Robb, no one mentioned this to you? Yes, Lord Roose Bolton had a quarrel with the Great John. The Great John wanted to go to King's Landing. Renly's problem will be dealt with later. Lord Roose Bolton meant that we should go to King's Landing first. Yansheng, catch the little lion again. Understood. Clay understood why Robb said this. In his opinion, revenge is the first priority, and everything else has to be on the sidelines. If he goes to the west, it will become robbery instead of revenge, because the capital city in King's Landing. Well, there is nothing more to say now, and I don't know how the Lannisters would feel if they knew that another 30,000 people were coming to kill them. Chapter 189. A place further north than the north. Not surprisingly, Clay once again took control of all the cavalry forces in the north without any opposition. The victory last time was clean and tidy, so taking over the military power this time will be much smoother. Although some families are already worried that the Manderly family is too powerful, and with Clay, a battlefield general who has military power, there may be some unexpected situations in the future. But for most nobles, they first have to ensure that most of the troops they take out can come back alive. The interests of the family come first, and loyalty to the Stark family must be compromised for the interests of the family most of the time. The population of the Northern Territory is sparse. If tens of thousands of people were killed or injured in a battle, it would be considered a crippling loss for the entire Northern Territory. You must know that these are strong laborers who play an irreplaceable role in the production process of this era. If all the troops brought out by a small noble were defeated, it would not only be a pension issue for these people, it would also mean that the strength of this territory in all aspects would be severely reduced. Taxation, public affairs, security, war potential, etc. all need to be supported by mature men. If there are not enough men in this era, it is impossible to even think about it. Therefore, they don't care about your Manderly family. As long as Clay Manderly can lead their soldiers to defeat all opponents and bring back most of their soldiers, it is best to carry a full load of soldiers like last time. Full of loot. Such a commander is what all soldiers dream of. Under this general premise, Clay's position as commander of the cavalry is unshakable. Anyone who dares to oppose will be in trouble with everyone. This war has two blessings. The first is the revenge war of the Stark family. It is more just than the last time. Last time, at least they were still arguing about whether Ed Stark was treason. This time there is no such thing. This problem does not exist. Also, this is Robb Stark once again wearing the crown of King of the North hundreds of years later. It has a different meaning to the entire North. As the whole of Westeros, it is advancing hand in hand with Dorne. As the birthplace of two major separatisms, the North's pursuit of independence has always existed objectively. For Robb Stark, if this battle is won, the Southerners will have no power to interfere with the independence of the North. The Northerners will surrender to the Targaryen family who own the dragon and ignore the natural dangers of the moat of Kaelin. You who are the Baratheons? There were still 2 days left before Bot. Clay, who was inspecting the camp outside the city, was suddenly stopped by Winterfell soldiers riding on horseback. Clay didn't understand what was going on. The Earl of Deepwood Castle, who was following him directly, frowned and asked, "What's the matter? Tell me quickly. Your Excellency still has to patrol the camp, and the soldiers' equipment must be carefully checked." Lord Clay, Sir Roderick sent a message that His Majesty wants you to return to the city now, saying that someone from the Great Wall is coming. Do you think so? The Great Wall? Okay, I understand. Now go back and tell Sir Roderick that I will return to the city as soon as I finish arranging the affairs. Clay nodded and waved his hand to let the Stark family soldier, who was wearing a direwolf smock, leave. Earl Glover was a little strange and said doubtfully, "People are coming from the Great Wall, and the Night's Watch is coming to us? Could it be that Lord Eddard's brother Benjen is back? Moreover, even if Benjen comes back, it is a matter for the Stark family. With Lord Clay, what is the relationship?" What Earl Glover said was exactly what Clay wanted to know, but he couldn't talk about it more. He could only say, "I don't know, let's take a look first. In this way, you can then patrol the camp and make a statistics on the soldiers' equipment. I have to know what the situation of the soldiers under my hands is." The general does not know the soldiers on the battlefield, but he has to send out questionable. After Clay finished explaining, Earl Glover, Earl of Deepwood Mott, was still taking orders under Clay this time. After all, he was an old acquaintance from the last war. After confirming that there was nothing wrong, Clay pulled the reins of his horse and rode towards Winterfell. He suddenly realized that besides the valley, he had also overlooked a more critical place. When Clay stepped into the main hall of Winterfell, he saw 2 people, an old man and a young man. He didn't recognize the old man, but he still remembered the thin face of the young man. "John? Why are you back?" Clay was very surprised. Why did the wind fanned by his little butterfly also blow to the isolated Great Wall? Shouldn't John stay on the wall until the end of time? What's wrong? "Clay, I'm nice to see you again. I've heard from Robb about your record when you went south last time. I really admire you." John's nose tone was quite serious, but he was obviously a young man who wanted to show off his maturity and stability and did it deliberately. In Clay's impression, John didn't speak like this. Okay. It's really cold at the Great Wall. It's frozen your tongue, John. You can't speak well, can you?" Clay walked towards him with a smile and then looked at the other 2 people in the room, the old man and Robb Stark sitting in front of the fireplace. Pulling up a chair and sitting down, Clay took off his gloves, looked at Robb Stark, who was sitting in the main seat with a not so good-looking face, and asked directly, "Robb, what's the matter with calling me back?" Robb opened his folded palms, pointed at the gray-haired old man next to John, who was wearing dark night watch clothes, and said, "Clay, let me introduce to you. This is Jeor Mormont, the 997th Commander-in-Chief of the Night's Watch." He brought John here. "Jeor Mormont? Isn't this Mr. Shing? Oh my God, why did he, the commander, come with him? What happened to the Great Wall?" In Clay's impression, counting the time, It won't be long before this respected commander-in-chief of the Night Watch will be successfully backstabbed by his subordinates and eventually die outside the Great Wall. But now it seems that things are going wrong. Changed. Hello, Commander-in-Chief. I am not a Stark. I cannot welcome the brothers of the Night's Watch on behalf of this castle again. However, White Harbor welcomes visits from the Night's Watch at any time. If soldiers are needed, I will contact my uncle Willis and ask him clearing the dungeon in Kongang. In the north, the treatment of the Night Watchman is much better than in the south. It can be said that the treatment of the Night Watchman in Black walking on the land south of the Neck is not much different from that of the demon hunters in another world. Fear, contempt, speaking ill of each other, the eldest brother not laughing at the second brother, they are really the same, but the Night Watchman is an official after all, and real ordinary people don't dare to do anything like that. In the north, the Night Watch has always had a good relationship with the major families in the north, because in fact the Night Watch is guarding the gates for the gentlemen. If they fall and the Great Wall is lost, threats from further north will have to be the northern nobles came to resist. The name Strong Shield of the Kingdom is still recognized by everyone here in the north. Therefore, all castles in the north welcome the arrival of the Night Watch, and most of them will not refuse the support of the personnel. Then you're welcome. The Great Wall really needs support now. I'm not here to bring any good news. Commander-in-Chief Jeor Mormont had a look of helplessness on his old face. There was a glass of water on the long table in front of him, but it was obvious that he didn't have time to drink it and it was already cold. Well, Clay Mandler, right? I'm sorry, I haven't paid attention to the news in the south for a long time. In fact, if it weren't for your majesty on the battlefield, I wouldn't even know you existed. Jeor Mormont had a gentle smile on his face, and Clay noticed that sitting next to him was Jon Snow, also dressed in black, with a long sword hanging on his waist. If he guessed correctly, then it should be the Valyrian steel sword Longclaw that was once inherited from the Mormont family. Commander-in-Chief, let's talk about these things later. I want to hear what you mean by bad news. After all, I don't think the situation can be much worse when the army is gathered. Clay had actually vaguely understood the meaning of the bad news. After all, the wandering White Walkers were regarded as ghost stories by Northerners, but Clay knew that they did exist. As the representative of the magical side of the world, the White Walkers are actually the most difficult to grasp. Based on what the Three-Eyed Crow told him at the beginning, the purpose of the Old God faction he represents is to maintain stability, and the purpose of supporting Clay is to prevent Lahiro's power has grown too much. Okay, it seems that the young general thinks that I am a long-winded old man, so okay, I will tell you. Clay, have you heard the rumors about the White Walkers? The commander-in-chief's tone suddenly became serious. Of course Clay knew it, but he couldn't know it now. He could only start to perform. He was stunned for a moment and asked in an uncertain tone, White Walkers, isn't this a legend? I've always heard this kind of thing as a story. Yes, most people are like this. I was like this before, but now I don't think so. I am here this time to tell everyone in Winterfell that the White Walkers really exist, and that they came back. Clay's heart moved. Sure enough, due to his influence, the news of the White Walkers' attack spread to Winterfell, the capital of the north. However, if Clay remembered correctly, didn't the Great Wall have a magic barrier? If there were no unexpected circumstances, such as Daenerys' brainless behavior of sending the dragon away in anger, the Great Wall should not collapse. As for him, the Commander-in-Chief, would he go there personally? Commander-in-Chief, I completely believe you. Although this thing sounds like a child's prank, if you tell me, then this matter must be an established fact. I believe in the existence of White Walkers. You continued to say. Clay's reaction was beyond everyone's expectations. When Robb Stark heard the news just now, he repeatedly confirmed with Commander-in-Chief Mormont whether he was wrong, but Clay accepted it directly. Well, thank you, Master Clay, for your understanding, then I will continue. This incident started with 3 of our ranger brothers who left the Great Wall north of the Great Wall, led by a boy named Wymer Royce. They were chasing the savages and then the news was lost. When we found them, they had turned into stiff corpses. Another one should have been a deserter. King Robb told me that he died at the hands of Lord Eddard Stark. Yes, I also participated in that execution. Later, their frozen bodies were brought back to Castle Black, and then, one night, they opened their ice-blue eyes and the bodies came alive. Clay frowned. To any uninformed person, these words would sound like pure nonsense, but Clay knew very well that this must be true, and the threat of the White Walkers did indeed exist. We had to raise our swords against our former brothers, but our steel swords could not kill them. We cut off their arms and did not affect their movements at all. They are no longer human beings. In the end, it was the Valyrian steel sword that killed the thing. Jon Snow added that he knew this very well. After all, he saw it with his own eyes. Clay frowned and said nothing. He had a vague impression of these things, but the Night's Watch had a total force of 1,000 people. They should be solved no matter what, and they should not be enough to call for help from Winterfell. Commander-in-Chief Mormont's memories continued. He finally realized that he was thirsty, and regardless of the ice-cold temperature of the water, he drank it directly, exhaled, and continued. We killed them. After that, the wildlings in the north, led by their king, a guy named Mance Rayder, kept approaching the Great Wall. After we realized the danger, we ordered Chief Ranger Bunyan Stark led 300 men out of the fortress. They finally came back, but there were only a dozen of them. These brothers who escaped death brought us the news that the White Walkers did exist. They said that our brothers were killed by those things that were as cold as ice. When you die, you become a living corpse. Also, a brother who followed Benjen Stark and rushed to the front told us an unexpected message while trembling. He told us that there were more than 2 enemies in the north, including White Walkers, wildlings, and there are some guys wearing ferocious armor. Clay was lost in thought as he listened to the completely unrecognizable news. In his mind, shouldn't this expedition be for Lord Commander Mormont to lead his men to find the missing Benjen Stark? This turned out to be Lord Commander Mormont sending Benjen Stark north to drive out the wildlings. As a result, he encountered the White Walkers and almost all of them died. What on earth is going on? Moreover, Clay noticed the last words of the Commander-in-Chief, something wearing ferocious armor. This was definitely an unexpected situation. The White Walkers themselves are not mindless shadow creatures. They are not so much ghosts as they are intelligent creatures constructed from cold magic that live in an ice and snow environment. Opposing them are giant dragons constructed of fire magic. Clay understands this, but the problem is that in his impression, the White Walkers do not have any ferocious armor or other settings. Shouldn't their pale bodies be covered with ice armor formed by cold magic? Steel can't be made in that place, so how can you make any armor? Besides, the White Walkers don't need armor. Isn't this unnecessary? Suddenly, a picture of the White Walkers north of the Great Wall, swinging a sledgehammer, making fire and forging iron under the eyes of the cold god, was automatically printed in my mind. How should I put it? It felt inexplicably joyful. So, assuming the lucky guy who's alive got it right, this is interesting because it's something new about the ship that's beyond Clay's memory. Later, Mance Rayder, the king of the wildlings beyond the wall, quickly approached the Great Wall in a very short period of time. Mance Rayder sent a messenger, asking us to let them enter the Great Wall. The reason they gave was that there were 2 things chasing them in the north. The White Walkers killed their people and turned them into zombie-like corpses, and the White Walkers, who wore ferocious iron armor and rode similarly armored horses, the knights, are arresting their people wantonly. Mance Rayder said that they had already suffered 20,000 losses along the way and could no longer hold on. Otherwise, they would never surrender to us Black Crows. Commander-in-Chief Mormont said this with a hint of disdain, ridicule, and a little bit of worry. He knew very well that these savages who called themselves free people flaunted their so-called free spirit, but in fact they were not ready to reconcile with the Southerners. To put it bluntly, they wanted to save face and suffer. The stubbornness of the wildlings is equivalent to the character of Stannies. However, how much fear is chasing them to force the king of the wildlings to surrender to the Night's Watch Legion, which they call the Black Crow, and beg for mercy? The White Walkers and the whites they transformed into are actually slightly strengthened zombies with some magical abilities superimposed, but it is actually not difficult to restrain them. The large amount of dragon crystal contained on Dragonstone contains thin fire magic. Just like why the three-eyed crow is so afraid of Clay, once magic from different sources breaks into the opponent's body, it will cause the body composed of magic to collapse from the inside. Therefore, here in Clay, the White Walkers and the so-called Army of the Dead are actually not a problem. Even if all the creatures outside the Great Wall are dead, it doesn't matter if they all become corpses. As long as the number does not increase, it doesn't matter. What the Commander-in-Chief means is to let these savages in. After all, if these people are allowed to live outside the Great Wall, if they are transformed into that kind of thing, it will be a huge pressure for us. Robb Stark added. Clay nodded, looked at Commander Mormont who didn't speak anymore, and asked, Commander-in-Chief, please explain to me here. If we really don't let a wild man in, they will definitely go crazy. With the current Night Watch army, can we stop them? Yes, if the Night's Watch rejects the wildlings, knowing full well that the White Walkers and the mysterious enemy are constantly eating away at them, what do you think Mance Rayder will do? If you want to survive, there is only one solution, and that is to take a risk on the Great Wall where the Night Watch Legion is stationed. If you can defeat it, it is better to go to the south of the Great Wall even if you are alone than to die north of the Great Wall. Hearing Clay ask this, Commander-in-Chief Mormont knew that the young battlefield general had already figured out the key to this problem. There are only 1,000 members of the Night Watch Corps, and they have to guard such a long defense line of the Great Wall. In fact, there are only 3 castles along the Great Wall that are still active. Mance Rayder claims to have an army of 100,000. Even if there are only 10,000 of them who can fight, it certainly cannot be defended by these 1,000 people. Besides, Clay knows very well that in theory, people can circumvent the Grand Canyon on the west side of the Great Wall. Came here, even if a few hundred people are bypassed, and a sudden attack is launched on the Night Watch Legion, the price is unbearable by the Legion. Moreover, after experiencing so many battles, the only 700 people left under the Night Watch Legion are the gods. Blessed. Here, I believe some readers already know what I have changed and added. Yes, during this period of time, the protagonist system has not been activated. It seems that the demon hunter has become useless, but don't worry, they will play their role later. When it works, after all, witchers must do something that suits their status. Don't worry, it's not yet the time when the heavens and the earth meet. The main theme is still the unification war of the 7 countries, but there are some things that I have to pave the way for in advance. The basic logic of a Game of Thrones fan story is to start a civil war, win the civil war, crush the White Walkers with great strength, and then it ends or cannot be written anymore. As one of the bosses written by Martin, I have always felt that the White Walkers cannot be so weak. In the show, they are made to look like zombies, but that is not the case at all. Chapter 190 Fight against foreigners or keep peace within? It's a pity that the Night Watch Legion can't do it. The Legion's troops are too small. If those savages really go crazy, we will definitely not be able to stop them. Unless we increase our troops, it will be impossible. Commander-in-Chief Mormont sighed, and the white smoke he exhaled was particularly obvious in the white sunlight. There was too little the Night's Watch could do. After all, they only had a few hundred people. Now, things are finally clear, and Clay also fully understands why Commander-in-Chief Mormont came to Winterfell. This is really not something that their already weakened Night's Watch can decide. Without the support of the North, their destruction had just happened in the blink of an eye. Because if we let people in, given the wild and untamable nature of the free people, hundreds of Night Watchmen will definitely not be able to do it to ensure that they don't cause trouble, and we must send more people. In this era, there is actually no difference in equipment. To put it bluntly, if you pick up a wooden stick and put some rusty nails on it, it will immediately become a weapon with a tetanus bonus. As long as a hit is taken, even if it is a knight or a well-trained soldier, with the medical level and scarce medical resources of this era, if the length of time is extended, the theoretical damage will be similar to that of a sophisticated weapon forged with great time and effort. Therefore, the Night Watch Corps has to guard tens of thousands of savages. Although most of them are women and children, it is not something that a few hundred people can accomplish, which means that the North must send people to help. This is the real purpose of Commander-in-Chief Mormont going south. The decision-making power on this matter is actually no longer on the side of the Great Wall, but on the side of Robb Stark, who has just become king, and Clay, who controls the army. If Winterfell rejects the Great Wall's request for help, the Night's Watch will definitely close the door, and then use all their strength to defend and give it a try against the wildlings who are crazy for survival. And if the new king in the North agrees to accept them, then the people in the North must also send troops to manage them. Otherwise, these free people will be allowed to scatter throughout the northern land, posing a huge threat to the defenseless farmers. Commander Mormont, we understand your request. Next we need to discuss and let Jon take you to the guest room in Winterfell. Robb Stark understood Clay's look and knew that Clay wanted to talk to him in detail, which was what he wanted to do, so he asked the Commander-in-Chief of the Night Watch to leave first. Jon, remember to come back soon, I have some questions for you. Robb added. Clay shook his head slightly in his mind. He still had questions to ask. In fact, he felt that Jon Snow was a brother. He didn't want to avoid this matter, and he was still close to him in his heart. But this is not right, because the identities of the two people have changed now. If Jon Snow is still in Winterfell and is not an sworn brother of the Night's Watch, then it doesn't matter, but it is different now. One is a personal soldier of the Commander-in-Chief and is vaguely the trainer of the next commander, and the other is already the King of the North. On this matter, the positions of the two sides may conflict. At this time, you Robb Stark asked Jon to listen, so why did you ask Lord Commander Mormont to leave? Isn't this unnecessary? After the two people disappeared, Clay frowned and said to Robb, Robb, you are the king now, and this matter must be your responsibility. What do you think? Father has always taught me that everyone who can forgive should be given a chance. Besides, it would not be good for us to just block them out and let them transform into white ghosts or corpses. Robb expressed his opinion, and since there was no one in private, their communication became much smoother. Robb, you are right, but you have to consider a question. We have now declared war on the Lannister in King's Landing, and you, the king, have also been crowned. Then you go to fight the wildlings? Also, although you are the king, what do the other nobles in the north think? What do the Night Watch Legion think? They have fought with the wildlings for so many years, and now they have become brothers. Didn't the previous brothers die in vain? But they came to me. Aren't they willing to do this? If they don't want to, there is no need for them to come. This is where old Mormont is shrewd. This actually hands the opposition of the Night's Watch and the northern nobles to you. If you decide to let all the wildlings die, you will be responsible for the consequences. And you ordered the Night's Watch to let people in. Remember, this is your order. The opposition pressure from the Night's Watch and the North will be yours, Robb Stark. I think I made it clear. Yes, when Clay understood the ins and outs of the matter, he immediately understood how sophisticated Mormont was. Regardless of whether he let people go or not, the Night's Watch had no responsibility anyway, because in the end it is the King of the North who decides. I, the Night's Watch, are weak and can only obey the orders of the King of the North. Therefore, it has nothing to do with me, the Commander-in-Chief of the Night's Watch. If you have any objections, don't come to me. This was the reason why Clay didn't want Jon to be present. The boy had a great affection for the Night's Watch. If Clay said this in front of him, it would probably lead to a quarrel, which was very boring. Clay's words made Robb's head buzz. He had never thought about it so much. He called Clay back because this matter involved troop deployment and he only needed Clay's opinion. I understand. According to your opinion, no matter what happens in this matter, we have to send troops, either to maintain law and order or to assist the Night Watch in defending the Great Wall. Robb Stark was not too stupid, and he summed it up very quickly without being confused by Clay's words. At this time, Jon came in after seeing off Commander-in-Chief Mormont, glanced at his brother, and sat back down where he was just now. Clay nodded to Jon and then answered Robb's question. Yes, you must send this soldier, but now there is a question, what should we do about going south? Damn it, I just forgot to ask Lord Commander Mormont how many people he wants. I can't possibly give him all my troops. Robb punched the desk. This sudden incident interrupted his southward revenge plan, especially because Commander-in-Chief Mormont was playing tricks on him and letting him, the King of the North, take the blame for the Night's Watch. Now he is being we had to send troops to fight. Robb Stark hated others for lying to him. Now, the Commander-in-Chief of the Night's Watch lied to him openly and he had no choice. If Clay hadn't reminded him, he would still be in the dark. Jon, what is the situation in the Night's Watch? There is no one else here, just the three of us. You have to tell us the truth. Robb Stark glared at his brother with some annoyance, leaving the latter who had just come in a little confused. Lord Commander Mormont didn't say much to Jon, so the two stupid boys didn't understand the deception behind it. It's not good, it's very bad. The key is that morale is not good. Now the White Walkers, the Free Folk Legion, and the mysterious armored cavalry have made the legion that has suffered a lot of losses a little scared. Jon shook his head bitterly. He was a witness to these things. Although he did not directly go out to face the White Walkers, he saw the tragic situation of the legion. The last time he went out to the fort, he lost more than 200 people. For the legion, it was a serious injury. Muscles move bones. Tell us about the current status of the Night Watch, including the defense of the Great Wall and the situation outside the wall. Your commander has given Robert a big problem this time, which makes it very difficult for us to solve. Jon blinked in confusion. He didn't understand what Clay meant. He felt that he was here to ask for help this time. Is this difficult? The Great Wall is currently occupied by Black Castle. There are still people stationed at Shadow Tower and Eastwatch. The other fortresses are abandoned. There is a huge shortage of people. Originally, there were more than 600 people stationed in Blackfield Castle, and the other two forts were about 200 each. But this time, nearly 300 people were lost in the fortress. Many of the things that Blackfield Castle was capable of were no longer occupied. The people on the ice wall where inspections have also stopped. You all know the wind and snow on the Great Wall. If regular snow removal is not done, many places will freeze into big ice lumps, making it impossible for people to cross. Due to the small number of people, some people had to hold multiple jobs to maintain the normal life and operation of 1,000 people. But this time more than 280 people were lost outside the Great Wall. Many craftsmen were gone and some jobs were forced to shut down. Okay, we get it. Now tell us about the things outside the wall. Let's talk about the savages first. How many are there and how are their combat capabilities? Clay understood that by asking this, Robb Stark had already made up his mind to send troops, so there was no need for him to say anything else. Anyway, if you stand on the Great Wall now and the weather is clear, you can see their bizarre and huge camp. Experienced brothers estimate that it is about 100,000. Jon answered honestly. He frowned and tried to organize his words when talking about the question of the wildlings' combat power. The savages, or free folk, do not have the ability to produce iron weapons on their own. It is better to use weapons obtained from the corpses of our sworn brothers. The average free folk warriors use bone or stone weapons. This answer is as expected by Clay. That ghost place is frozen all year round. Even if there are settlements like Fort Difficulty and Camp Custer, it is impossible to develop a more advanced civilization. Naturally, it is impossible to create a powerful one. Arms. Of course, not all of these 100,000 people are capable of fighting. What proportion of them are old people, women and children? Robb Stark asked. Jon shook his head, his dark hair swaying back and forth under the cold light, and he said, "You can't count it that way, because the women of the free people are also warriors. They are spearwives, and they can fight on the battlefield without fear. I have seen sworn brothers killed by spearwives. Jon, don't blame me for asking. You have to give us an estimate. How many free people can one of us fight against? This is very important. You must understand that I am fighting a war now. This problem is very critical. Even if there are 100,000 free people, less than half can fight. Even if they are 50,000, there are still so-called spear wives among them. No matter what the name is, speaking from objective facts, women's combat effectiveness is not as good as men's. This is a problem of innate physiological structure. Based on the nutritional status of savages, the combat effectiveness of spearwives is only slightly stronger than that of boys. If both sides are not injured, then we can hit several of them, 7 or 8, of course, not at the same time. The equipment of the free people is very poor. This is a big disadvantage for them when they fight with us. Their weapons will often be cut off by us after a few collisions with our swords. You are all swords hands, you know what the consequences will be if your weapon breaks during a duel. Moreover, they don't have armor. They only wear a thick layer of clothes at most. But this kind of protection can only block the cold wind and has no effect when facing the piercing sword edge. Understand, this is the super beggar version of light infantry. In addition to its bravery, its combat effectiveness is actually very eye-catching. No wonder Stannis in the memory can defeat 100,000 men with a cavalry of 1,000 men. Read. A bunch of crazy guys. Robb Stark said disdainfully that in his opinion, with this level of equipment, daring to attack the Great Wall head-on was no different from seeking death. Clay, if you bring your cavalry, can you defeat them in one fight? If we follow the information Jon gave us, it should be possible, but Robb, we don't know where the things behind the wildlings are. We must be prepared to encounter them at any time. As Commander-in-Chief Mormont said, with a steel sword is ineffective against them, which is a big problem. Clay knew that at this stage, it was not yet time for the White Walkers to attack the city, so he actually did not want to go out to deal with the wildlings. He would have lost his manpower in vain. There were hundreds of thousands of wildlings living in the haunted forest, and Mance Rayder only had them in his hands. A very small part. To put it bluntly, these people were just killed by the White Walkers. Clay didn't care, because they were not the real main force of the zombie army, and what he was really worried about was the ferocious armored knight who mysteriously appeared. He wasn't sure what it was. After all, it involved magical creatures, the ultimate problem in the world, and it wouldn't be surprising for any strange things to happen. Clay had some vague guesses in his mind, but the speculation itself was absurd enough. Without seeing it with his own eyes, he couldn't be sure whether his guess was correct or not. It would be even more interesting if it was really those guys. There's nothing we can do about it. We must send out these soldiers. It's too slow to send infantry up. Moreover, the terrain outside the Great Wall is gentle, which is the most suitable battlefield for cavalry. Robb Stark made the decision. Clay didn't want to argue with him at this point, so he nodded, turned to Jon Snow and said, "Whether it's a free citizen or a savage, if you want to come to our land, you must become part of the people of the North. According to my idea, accept this surrender and then be dispersed and evenly filled into the hands of every lord in the North." Inside, Jon Snow shook his head. They won't. They call us kneeling people. If we want them to kneel down with Robb and become his people, it's better to kill them. In response to such words, Clay directly responded with a merciless mocking sneer. He said, "Okay, if you don't want to kneel down, then I will tell them, as the cavalry commander of the Northern Army, and the heir to the Manderly family, that the gate of the Great Wall is only open to those who can understand human speech. If you don't want to kneel down, I will tell them. That is rebellion, and when the sword falls on their head, they will know what regret is. They are also poor people. When there was no Great Wall, they were just like us. I once heard a savage prisoner say that they always thought that we were coming, and then built the Great Wall to block them outside and then hunt them down." Jon Snow's tone was full of sympathy, and Clay understood that this boy's soft-hearted problem had occurred again. He got carried away when he was excited and wavered when things really happened. This was all Jon's problem. "Jon, stand your ground. You are a northerner. Even if you become the Night's Watch, you are still a strong shield that protects this kingdom. Why did the wildlings end up in this situation? Why did we build a wall to keep them out? It doesn't even have anything to do with a Bronze Star out there. Our population in the north has never been large, and a large amount of land is actually uncultivated. You are the son of Lord Eddard Stark. How can you not know this kind of thing? As long as they can put down their ridiculous, so-called dignity and be honest, if you are actually a subject of the Stark family, who would make things difficult for them? Let me tell you, I hope they can all pass through the Great Wall alive. We in the north can only mobilize up to 20,000 people to join the war. But what about the Tyrell family in the south? The first mobilization was more than 80,000 people. But if they don't obey and don't kneel down to us lords and nobles, then they will be in complete trouble. How do you ask me and your brother to manage them? Do we dare to let them go to the countryside? They are wild and difficult to tame. It's always going to be trouble. Do you understand? Clay's words were not polite at all. Since he was going to fight this time, he had to completely break the backs of these savages. If they still dared to resist, Clay didn't mind taking action directly. He has already killed many people. To expect him to be merciful in such matters is to underestimate him. John, go tell Commander-in-Chief Mormont that in 2 days, I will reorganize the army and go north. You will return early and prepare a place for my army to station and provide logistics and food. The Night's Watch will not participate in the affairs of the Seven Kingdoms, but you have requests. Let's not expect to stay out of it. Clay gave the order coldly. He said these words with absolute certainty. The magnanimity of the commander of the Northern Cavalry was clearly demonstrated. He was as different from John as a small steward. Robb said nothing and let John leave silently. He was not happy in his heart. Although it was normal for the North to support the Night's Watch, this kind of thing would undoubtedly interrupt his revenge plan. Moreover, his brother's stance also made him feel uncomfortable, because Clay's words were not wrong at all. He regarded John as his brother, so he asked him to come over to discuss the next plan together. This was based on the Stark family and the Manderly family, which are all northern aristocratic systems, and in John's words, he stood on both sides. The Night Watchman, everything he said was an oath to do what his brothers would do. Although he should have said this, it still left Robb Stark feeling betrayed by his brother. Come on, I won't say anything more. There are still a lot of things waiting for me to deal with in the military camp. I'll take the cavalry away first. How long do you think it will take to get it done? I don't know. Maybe I was lucky. I rushed over and cut off Mance Rayder's head with a sword. Then the frightened wildlings surrendered and asked the Night Watch to remove all their weapons. And then push them to Winterfell and the matter will be done. Then you go to the Godswood and stay under the Heart Tree for a while, and let the old gods bless you. Have you forgotten? My Manderly family believes in the 7 gods, and the old gods dare not let me worship them. Go quickly, don't linger here. Chapter 191 Soldiers arrive at the Great Wall. The Great Wall once was glorious. At its peak, more than 10,000 troops were stationed along this hundreds of miles of ice and snow wall. You know, the land near the Great Wall has been covered with ice and snow for years. Even in midsummer, it is difficult to melt the snow. Large-scale agricultural planting is almost impossible. Therefore, the logistics of these 10,000 people are almost entirely maintained by the rear, and the huge army of 10,000 Night Watchmen produced may be the largest standing army in the history of Westeros so far. What is sad is that this once huge and glorious force now has less than 800 people left, and it is filled with all kinds of villains, rapists, thieves, robbers, and small nobles who have made mistakes, or knights and so on. It is simply impossible to expect them to block the savage army with tens of thousands of soldiers on such a wide defense line. Even if they are replaced by elite soldiers with strict discipline, they cannot do it. Clay, with 5,000 cavalry, left the huge military camp outside Winterfell and quickly headed north along the King's Road connecting Castle Black and Winterfell. Marching on this road with the best traffic conditions in the entire northern border, Clay increased the marching speed by 1/3. Even so, the entire army did not feel tired because they were all walking on smooth roads. It's like getting on the highway. Jon Snow and Commander-in-Chief Mormont had already set off for Castle Black one step ahead of them. This was not like Stannis, who landed at Eastwatch and then headed directly towards Mance, seemingly without any need for logistics. Redmond passed by. If the Northerners want to take a boat, and with such a large-scale cavalry, they probably can only let Clay take them to White Harbor. Only their own fleet can transport so many people there in one go. As a commander, he considered going to Castle Black first, but he didn't plan to rush into the army. He had no idea what the battlefield situation was. He didn't even have a map. He couldn't fight based on his feelings, right? Therefore, the 5,000-strong army will definitely stay in Castle Black for a while. After Clay understands the situation and formulates a battle plan, he can finish the job with a thunderous strike. If you attack without preparation, if something goes wrong and these wildlings escape, it will be a bad thing, because the threat of the White Walkers is still there. They will still go south, and the Night's Watch has closed the door to peace talks. By that time, Clay's 5,000 men were firmly pinned here, guarding against the all-pervasive savage invasion. This was not the result he wanted to see. His style of using troops has always been to look for the right opportunity and strike swiftly and decisively without leaving any consequences. The further north you go, the colder the weather becomes. After crossing the long lake, there are even snowflakes in the sky. The climate in the north is very sensitive to the transition from late autumn to cold winter. Winter has not yet arrived, but from here, it is already a world of ice and snow. Going all the way north, passing through Zixindi, Haogyuan Town, Zhengdi, and Mole Village, at the end of the King's Road, Clay saw the huge city wall that attracted people's attention for the first time. It is gray-black, stretching from the east to the west of the field of vision. The top layer is white, which is snow that has not yet frozen into ice. Like a lonely giant beast, it has been crawling at the northernmost point of the kingdom for thousands of years, silently guarding humans in the south. This is the Great Wall of Despair, one of the 9 great walls described in the book Man-Made Miracles by Loma's Longlegs. One of the miracles. Coming here, the magic power in Clay's body became restless. He was very sure that the Great Wall itself contained huge magic power, which allowed him to clearly feel it from a considerable distance away. Damn it, did the night watchman stay in this damn place all this time? Earl Glover cursed in a low voice. He had just dismounted and checked the ground. The ground was frozen harder than steel. It took him a long time to dig out a small piece, but it was actually full of sparkling ice crystals. The soil here is already frozen, and no crops can grow here. Only the tree species in the ghost forest can plant their roots deep into the warmer ground and survive the wind and snow tenaciously. Earl Glover rubbed the sprained thumb he had just dug out, got on the horse's back, pushed the horse with his legs to come to Clay's side, and whispered, "Lord Clay, should we go directly to Castle Black with the whole army now? Should we still follow the old rules and send people around to guard the place? We must not let down our guard at any time, even in a woman's bed. We must protect ourselves." Nodding, Earl Glover understood what Clay meant and quickly left. After a while, dozens of war horses left the large army in all directions. They were the scout troops released by Clay's army. "Master Clay, arrangements have been made. I told them to just kill anyone who dares to attack them." Clay nodded. "This is the safest arrangement. There are only a few human settlements in this poor place, and people who see the northern cavalry uniforms will not have much reaction. Of course, the night watchman's uniform is very easy to identify. This order is actually aimed at the small group of savages that may be encountered." Clay never gives his intelligence sources to others. With Mormont playing tricks on him, Clay doesn't trust the Night's Watch. Although everyone is in the same trench now, if the Night's Watch side has any reservations, big problems will arise on the battlefield. "Let's go. First, go to Castle Black and meet our Commander-in-Chief Mormont. After all, we are guests. It is not appropriate to not even meet the master." After that, Clay kicked his spurs and the horse strode forward. Behind him, 5,000 cavalry lined up in 5 neat columns, following their commander silently. The horses' hooves trampled on the rammed earth road covered with a thin layer of snow, leaving shallow horse hoof prints in the shape of a bowl. The howling cold wind, mixed with snowflakes as sharp as knives, quickly buried these traces, so that those who came later had no idea that anyone had been there. The weather is cold all week. The army arrived at Black Castle. This is one of the largest castles along the Great Wall. On the south-facing side, it is almost entirely made of wooden structures, with wooden watchtowers, wooden fences, and just the gate tower. A stone tower. Most of the sworn brothers of the Night's Watch Legion had seen such a huge army for the first time. 5,000 cavalry were arranged neatly in 5 square formations on the southern plain of Castle Black. The Stark family's running wolf flag and the Manderly family's mermaid flag were flying high. The rest, as well as the Glover family's steel-framed Iron Fist flag, were slightly behind. Other than that, there was nothing else. Flag up. Jon Snow led a dozen soldiers dressed in black and riding thin dark horses out of the south gate of Castle Black to meet Clay and his army. "Clay, thank you for coming to support us. The Night's Watch Legion thanks the North for its assistance." Jon said this welcome speech in a high-sounding formal tone, but he did not see the smile he expected on Clay's face. Clay just nodded coldly and gave the order, "Is the camp ready for my troops to rest?" "Okay, I'll take you there." Jon Snow answered at a loss. Clay's reaction was a little beyond his expectation. He didn't understand why. "Lord Glover, follow Jon and light fires for our soldiers. It's too cold here. Only warmth can allow the soldiers to preserve their fighting power. Remember what you should do." Earl Glover agreed, his face also tense, as if covered with ice, not because of anything else, but because of Clay's tone when he said this. He and Clay went all the way south, and every time before going to the battlefield, this is Clay's tone. If you don't obey, you will die. Earl Glover understands that everyone who has been with Clay knows that privately Clay is a very easy to get together person, but as long as he talks to you in this tone, it means that he is serious, and not joking. Earl Glover left with the confused Jon Snow. Castle Black left 3 people with Clay. Clay also left 30 Manderly family guards and followed Clay. Enter the south gate of Castle Black. Directly opposite is a large square, which should be the place where the Night Watch Legion gathers and trains daily. Clay saw some weapon racks placed in the corners. There was no snow on them. It was obvious that someone was there. Frequently used. Commander-in-Chief Mormont was standing in the center of the square. Clay rode up to a distance of 10 steps away from him and dismounted. Behind him, 30 elite Manderly family members also dismounted in uniform movements. "Welcome to the north of the world, Lord Clay Manderly," Lord Commander Mormont said, a smile on his face. Clay didn't argue with him. The old guy got along with them. This was a conspiracy. No one could do anything about it. He felt uncomfortable. On the surface, he didn't need to compete with Commander-in-Chief Mormont, so he stretched out his hand. He took his hand and held it with the old guy's hand. The Night Watch Legion is a strong shield that guards the kingdom. Supporting the Legion is also the obligation of us nobles. There is nothing to say. Clay smiled, then exchanged a few pleasantries with Commander Mormont, and then walked into the towering tower called the Commander's Tower where the Commander-in-Chief of the Night Watch lived. He wanted to have a good talk with the Commander-in-Chief. After closing the door, only Clay and Commander-in-Chief Mormont were left in the Black Room. There was a table between them, on which was placed the hot soup that the attendant had just brought in. Clay stirred the soup and looked at the contents. There was almost no meat, just weird plant roots. "Do you usually eat these things?" "Yes, Lord Clay, this is pretty good. There are no products. We all rely on supplies from the south. Eastwatch occasionally sends some fish, but they all have a bit of a bad taste." Commander-in-Chief Mormont said nonchalantly that he had long been used to the hard life here, and every night watchman was used to it. With the level of products here, it would be strange to still have meat every meal. After a moment of silence, Clay said, "I brought 5,000 people this time, but they are all cavalry. After fighting this battle for you, we will leave. There is still a war in the south, a war we must fight. Therefore, we do not have the troops to defend you along the Great Wall." "Oh, this is really not good news." "It is to avenge Lord Eddard Stark, right?" Commander-in-Chief Mormont asked. He was a contemporary of Ed Stark. Mormont's surname was the Lord family of Bear Island in the north. Back then, he gave up his position as the head of the family and was driven away by Clay. Jorah Mormont came to the Great Wall and became the Lord Commander of the Night's Watch. Therefore, he felt uncomfortable with the violent death of Ed Stark. Although the Night's Watch itself did not intervene in the affairs of the Seven Kingdoms, the memory of the past would not be falsified. Yes, so this battle must be fought. If something like this hadn't happened suddenly on the Night Watch, I would have gone south with His Majesty Robert. Commander Mormont didn't say anything else. Clay's words were already very clear. "We in the north still recognize you as the strong shield of the kingdom, so I will not avenge you for the time being. I will come to help you fight, but don't treat us as fools." The reason why Clay's troops this time are all cavalry is, first of all, because he is comfortable with cavalry, and secondly, the battlefield he estimates is all plains, and the snow is not thick enough now, so the horses can gallop at full speed. As for the last reason, the cavalry cannot be kept here at all. If the infantry is brought here, it is possible that he will become the captain of the northern garrison at the Great Wall. "Okay, now that I'm here, I have to get things done. Tell me about the situation of the savages first, so that we can have an idea." Commander-in-Chief Mormont looked at the young man in front of him and couldn't help but sigh in his heart. After all, Wyman Manderly has an excellent heir who can achieve this level under the age of 20. He originally didn't believe much in Clay's achievements in the south, but now he somewhat believes it, because the nobles from the north who came with him all followed the young man in front of him. For example, right now, Clay Manderly was discussing a battle plan with himself, the commander-in-chief, and no other nobles were called in. This signal was very obvious. The entire northern cavalry group of 5,000 people is under the control of this young man. He does not need to discuss with anyone. What he says is an order that cannot be violated in this army. Their situation. When you go up the ladder to the city wall at night, you can see the firelight of their camp. Mance Rayder claims to have put 100,000 people in front of us, but I guess he is bluffing. Are you saying that Mance Rayder's total force is not that large, or that he only has tens of thousands of people on the front and he divided his forces? Yes, I am leaning towards him dividing his troops. The rangers from Shadow Tower and Eastwatch have both reported the presence of wildlings. Although the wildlings are tribes, they finally elected a king. What do you think of these two sides? The wildlings have nothing to do with Mance Rayder? If you say so, Mance Rayder is stalling for time with us. He will lead the main force himself, dragging hundreds of you people to Castle Black, and then let others bypass the Great Wall from Seal Bay or the Grand Canyon? Clay raised this question. If this was the case, then he would have to divide his troops immediately, break up the large troops into small groups, and hunt in small groups the savage groups that were preparing to go ashore or across the canyon. The Battle of Castle Black in my memory was not just about the wildlings bypassing the Great Wall and attacking from the weak southern part of Castle Black, causing great trouble to the Night's Watch. Not necessarily. I think Mance Rayder's desire to negotiate with us is still very strong. What's behind their butts frightens them. However, there are only a limited number of people who can pass through Seal Bay and the Grand Canyon. They don't have the courage to negotiate with us. That time, Commander-in-Chief Mormont shook his head. He and Mance Rayder were old rivals. They had tested each other along the Great Wall for many rounds. Clay felt that he could trust this judgment. Didn't anyone send someone to talk to Mance Rayder? What are they going to do? I sent them, but the effect was not good. Those savages kept trying to get into the city, but as soon as the people I sent out put down their weapons and accepted management, they blew up their nests and made no progress at all. Commander-in-Chief Mormont sounded a little impatient. This was not directed at Clay, but because he was angry at the mention of those wildlings. Stubborn, Clay concluded coldly, and the old guy nodded vigorously next to him. That's what he meant. The news about our arrival must be kept strictly confidential and must not be known to the savages. Commander-in-Chief, you should understand what I mean. Commander-in-Chief Mormont nodded. He knew what Clay was going to do. If he wanted to fight, the cavalry was not the infantry. If he could strike the opponent unprepared with a thunderous strike, the effect would be much better than doing it openly. Sighing, he said, I will restrain my men. All rangers who leave the fortress will not be allowed to approach the savage camp again. I will try my best to ensure that your existence is not known to the savages. Clay nodded and said no more. The situation was already clear to him. The Night's Watch had too few troops on the Great Wall and could only be concentrated at 3 points. Now Mance Rayder's army was blocking the door. This was tantamount to letting him down. The defenders of Castle Black were unable to move. There are too few people in Eastwatch and the Shadow Tower itself, which means that the defense of the Great Wall has changed from 1 line to 3 points. Mance Rayder can break through from any position at will. If the Great Wall is not too high, it is almost impossible to climb up. Impossible. Even if Clay came now, the Great Wall would have fallen long ago. The gate leading to the outside of the Great Wall. How many people can go out at one time? Clay thought of another problem. If the city gate is too small and only one horse can go out at a time, then among his 5,000 people, the first person to go out in the morning will probably have dinner by the time the last person comes out. During this period, if a savage scout came over to take a look from a distance, the suddenness of the cavalry in Clay's hands would be gone. Stannis had 1,000 men at the time, and he landed from Eastwatch, directly outside the Great Wall, so there was no such problem. And 1,000 people is actually not enough. After all, there are tens of thousands of people, that is, tens of thousands of pigs. A total of. It's a conspiracy. Therefore, Stannis could only fight a rout, not a battle of annihilation. The escaped wildlings were still unruly and troublesome in the end. But Clay was different. The 5,000 men waiting for work were enough to form a huge encirclement on the plains, beat the savages to the point of pain in their hearts, and then chase the defeated soldiers and bite them, beating them until they surrendered. The door opening is quite wide, so 3 horses can go out at the same time without any problem. If you squeeze in, it's okay for 4 horses but not more. Clay was quite satisfied with this answer, which meant that he could take out the cavalry regiment in about 4 hours, and there was no need to go out with 5,000 men in one go. 3,000 people went out first, directly disrupting the savages' formation and crushing their resistance. The remaining 2,000 people came out next and rushed directly in front of the savages' defeated army, hugging and surrounding them. Clay dared to surround 10,000 elite Lannister troops with 5,000 cavalry. Now he still has 5,000 men in hand to surround tens of thousands of miscellaneous wildling troops. Clay believes that his men can do it. As for how many dead souls will be left under the long sword of his cavalry, that is not a question that Clay considers. If one general is successful, not only 10,000 bones will be withered. Besides, he is not a general either. An invisible crown has been firmly placed on his head. In this world, there is never a throne that does not have numerous bones accumulated under it. Chapter 192. Nothing to say. Mance Rayder's stubbornness once again refreshed Clay's understanding of the word death, or death. It turns out that a person's ignorance and arrogance, as well as his incomprehensible so-called self-esteem, can really make him capable of anything. Cannot see clearly. After seeing with his own eyes that Commander-in-Chief Mormont and the negotiators sent out for the last time were stripped of their weapons and equipment and driven back in embarrassment, Clay knew that there was no way to negotiate with these people. There's no need to talk, so let's fight. Anyway, Clay believes that only what is defeated is real. It is really possible to expect these tens of thousands of savages to sincerely obey the management of the Night's Watch, which only has a few hundred people and is burdened with a blood feud. Not big. At night, Clay used the Night Watch Legion's human elevator and climbed to the top of the Great Wall. He wanted to see the situation of the wildling camp with his own eyes. It has to be said that the height and thickness of the Great Wall can indeed be called a miracle. With such a large amount of work, without the participation of magic, it would be impossible to build such a majestic city wall with the limited manpower and material resources of the North. On the other hand, if the North really relied on human wisdom to build such awesome buildings, then why were most of the castles of the noble families in the North that Clay saw were as shabby as a small courtyard? Huff. You must know that under the current social system, the core, the absolute core, of any place is the noble manor or castle in that place, because this is the most important node of the social order. Therefore, if the North really had the technology to cast the Great Wall, the castles of various houses would definitely not look like this. Wearing a thick fur cloak, without the sunlight, the snowflakes falling unchecked have turned from white to a gray-black color, sneaking into the gaps in people's clothes without any care. Clay, look, that's Mance Rayder's camp. Even the woods of the haunted forest can't block their fire. Jon Snow took Clay to the top of the Great Wall, and was pointing at the dots of firelight emerging from the endless ghost forest outside the wall stacks made of ice. That was where the savage army was stationed. Every bit of fire almost represented the smallest tent with at least 10 people. At this time, in Clay's eyes, the fire was like grain husks scattered on the ground and the threshing floor, and he could not count them at all. He understood why Lord Commander Mormont told him that Mance Rayder was bluffing. If all the people under the torches were counted, then the savage army pressing outside the city might have exceeded 100,000 people. Apart from anything else, as far as the social form of the savages is concerned, they simply cannot develop an organization that can organize an army of 100,000 people. This is not as simple as drawing a line and drawing it on the map. 100,000 people, not to mention all the army. What will you do with the logistics alone? What to do about the camp's garrison? What about the flow of information? There is no solution at all. There is a vast snowfield outside. If there are really 100,000 people here, then it means that there must be a huge herd of livestock or a huge food reserve behind. If this were not the case, just relying on the tribes coming to bring their own food, there would be no need to wait for Clay to come. This huge camp would be in chaos due to various problems. Clay estimated that he had at most 40,000 to 50,000 enemies in front of him, and that the number of adult men who could truly be called combatants might only be 10,000. There might be only 10,000 soldiers with weapons that could threaten the lives of his own soldiers. Just a few thousand people. Therefore, Mance Rayder claims to have an army of 100,000, which looks scary, but in fact, there are not many soldiers to fight at all. Of course, we can't blame him too harshly. In fact, he can bring together a group of scattered savages. Those who are qualified to challenge the Great Wall still have two skills. Mance Rayder, the king of the wildlings, is very courageous. This camp is almost in your face. This is because you have calculated that you do not have enough troops to go out of the city to attack him. Clay puffed out white air and casually grabbed a handful of fresh snow on the battlement with his leather-gloved palm. The gray-white snow deformed and shattered in his hand, leaving a small ball in his hand. Because of his boldness, I also have the obligation to teach him what real war is. I have to smash his camp like a kid playing house. When listening to this, Jon Snow, who was next to Clay, secretly observed his expression. There was no emotion on that face, which was as young as himself. It seemed that he was just saying that something was about to happen, and there would be no accidents. Inevitable result. Jon Snow was shocked. When he left Winterfell to work as a night watchman, the last time he saw Clay, he gave him the impression that he was a high-spirited young man. After all, being the heir of the Manderly family is equivalent to Robb's status in the Stark family. But now, Jon Snow felt extremely strange to Clay. The disregard for human life in his words made his back feel slightly cold. There were tens of thousands of people. Listen to what he meant. Do you want to take action directly? Clay, they actually didn't do anything wrong. They all want to live. Before Jon Snow finished speaking, he was interrupted by Clay, who raised his hand. He glanced at Jon Snow without any warmth and sneered, "Jon, I treat you as a brother, But I am not your father, and I have no obligation to teach you to be smart. I will only say this once, so remember it." He looked into Jon's eyes and said slowly, "Put away your pity. If you want to stay in this place, don't say what you just said. Use your brain to think about it. Most of the people in this place don't hate the savages to the core. How long have you been here? How many of their sworn brothers died under the tattered weapons of the savages before this? Moreover, if they disobey discipline and let go of the Great Wall, what will happen to our people in the north? At that time, they will scatter to various places in the north, plunder, rape, kill, and destroy. The things they did outside the Great Wall, can you imagine what would happen in the northern lands?" Seeing Jon Snow's silence, Clay gave the answer directly. He said, "At that time, the angry northern adults, such as the Amber family, the Karstark family, and your Stark family in Winterfell, will send troops to directly pursue them, and Lord Bolton of the Dreadfort, their skins will be peeled off and hung on the city walls to dry. Instead of making our people in the north pay their tears and blood, and then distract these savages from catching and killing them, it's better to just give them a pot now." Clay turned away, no longer looking at Jon Snow's depressed expression. He muttered to himself, as if whispering, "I would also like to thank you, Mance Raider, for helping me bring these people together. Just wait, tomorrow morning, I will use my own sword to repay you for your efforts." The young man in the gray cloak looked at the camp with flickering bonfires outside the city wall with his deep eyes. He understood that that was his prey. But the young man with the black cloak and black hair covered with snowflakes, almost blending into the night, stared blankly at the brazier flickering at his feet in the cold wind, speechless. In just a few months, or no longer than a year, these two young men, who were drinking and bragging in the dungeons of Winterfell, had become speechless. Their lives may never intersect again after this incident. Clay will return to the south and continue to complete what he should do, while Jon Snow will freeze in the loneliest corner of the world with the Great Wall, a big lump of ice. Let's go. There's nothing to see here. I hope the people outside the wall can have a good sleep tonight and dream about everything they want." Clay walked towards the elevator, and the rest of his voice was shattered by the fierce cold wind, because many of them will never see the sun the day after tomorrow. Of course, dreams will never come to them again. Chapter 193. The attack begins once the order is given. There is no chance of regret. After Clay returned to the room prepared for him by the Night's Watch, he immediately summoned all the northern nobles who had followed him. The level of science and technology these days is very different, and real-time communication is impossible on the battlefield. Therefore, in order to avoid the commander losing contact with each unit at the beginning of the war and still achieve the war goal, the generals need to advance in advance. Communicate. Clay called everyone into his room to assign combat tasks to them in advance. The battle would start tomorrow and the problem would be solved in one battle. Several thick candles were lit, illuminating the small room brightly. With his back against the bonfire, Clay tapped his fingers on the cold table, quietly waiting for everyone to arrive. These are all his officers and he has enough patience with these people. After all, the real battlefield command and his own will must be implemented well by them. It is unrealistic to expect the soldiers to understand and execute them. After everyone had arrived, Clay pointed to the seat and motioned for the last person to sit down. After looking around, he chuckled. "Everyone, the Great Wall of Despair is a good place. You have to cover your pants tightly when you sleep tonight. Otherwise, it's hard to say whether your things will still be usable when you get up early tomorrow morning." The rough old men showed mysterious smiles. Everyone was very protective of their brothers. At that moment, the whole room was filled with strange hee-hee laughter, which triggered the Night Watch soldiers to think, "Okay, let's stop talking nonsense. Now let's talk about tomorrow's events." Clay suppressed his smile, and the officers who were familiar with Clay's temper also calmed down knowingly. They were familiar with their commanders. When they were relaxed, they could joke around casually, but once they got serious, everyone had to start a fight. "Spirit. Master Clay, are we sure we want to fight?" As Clay's deputy, Earl Glover knew more than others, but he did not know the specific situation outside the wall. Only Clay, the commander who made the decision, knew this key information. "Yes, the savages have closed the window for peace talks with their own hands, so there is no need for us to be polite to them. We have already decided to prepare tomorrow morning. Tonight we will send out scouts, led by rangers who are familiar with the terrain, to go north from the Great Wall to observe them. Camp, see blood? Let me tell you something. Any wild man who discovers our army's scouts will send them to see the old gods with bows, arrows, and swords. The reconnaissance tonight is very important, so keep your spirits up. Do you understand?" "I understand." All the legions in the room shouted in unison. They already understood that their young commander had made up his mind to go to war, and calling them here now was to prepare for the war. They all know in their hearts that Clay Manderly always likes to maximize the suddenness of his own offensive when fighting. Whether it is the several battles south to attack the Lannister, or the current wildling annihilation battle, it is the same. Just now they were asking will there be blood? Which actually meant whether or not to kill the other side's scouts. If they didn't intend to take action, then just drive them away and there was no need to go all out. But if there is going to be blood, it means that Clay Manderly's purpose is very clear, to pluck out all the eyes placed on the periphery of the wildlings, which is the usual posture before a large-scale cavalry charge. Earl Glover, go down and make arrangements. There must be enough food tomorrow morning to ensure the strength of the soldiers. Also, at 6 o'clock tomorrow morning, the ice wall passage of Castle Black will be opened. As a forward, you will lead 1,000 people out of the city. Clay continued to issue combat orders. The food in the military camp was different from the food before the war. It was not a deprivation meal, but the physical exertion on the battlefield was very high, and there must be enough energy to replenish it. After your troops go out first, immediately move toward the back of the hill in the northeast direction. The Night Watch Rangers will take you to that location. We will meet again after I lead the main force out of the city. Okay, Master Clay, I will finish it on time. Remember, be silent, be quiet, and don't be discovered. The goal of your team is to intercept the escape route of the savages. Clay pointed to the detailed map spread on the oak table. The Night's Watch Legion had surveyed the terrain inside and outside the Great Wall for thousands of years. This map may be the most exquisite one in the Seven Kingdoms. He drew a line with his finger north of Castle Black and shifted toward the northeast, and continued, "Don't join the frontal battlefield yet. I believe that 4,000 people will be enough to overwhelm them. There are ice sheet crevices in the northwest and the terrain is rugged. As long as they still have brains, they will not run in that direction." Clay clicked on the northeast corner of the map, at the top of Stud's Corner, near the Shivering Sea, the largest fortress and largest ruin of the savages, Hardhome. They will not cross the Antler River again, otherwise they will be close to what they call the Army of the Dead. Therefore, they will definitely evacuate to the northeast. As for those who choose to run west, as long as there are not many people, ignore them. He raised his eyes, stared at Earl Glover who was holding his breath and staring at the map, and gave the final order. It's not possible to stop them. Hold them back. You are lone wolves. The purpose is to make the prey bleed, slow down the escape, and wait for the wolves to rush up and deliver a fatal blow. Remember, we can eat as many people as you can hold. Wherever Mance Rayder is, we will chase him. We must smash him and let him only see my flag. Able to kneel, frozen to death in the wasteland, or kneeling under my flag, these are the only two options. The night passed quickly. No matter whether people could fall asleep or not, time was still flowing forward stubbornly. Finally, it woke up the morning sun from the sea and shone in front of the gate of Castle Black. It is now 8 o'clock. In more than an hour, Earl Glover's 1,000 men have left the Great Wall north and sneaked towards the northeast. Now, Clay's main force is leaving the city. One by one, war horses, with well-equipped knights on their backs, walked out of the towering Great Wall of Impasse, puffing out white smoke. This time, Commander-in-Chief Mormont followed Clay into the battle with 300 Night's Watchmen, while Jon Snow was placed behind the scenes by Commander-in-Chief Mormont as the temporary commander of Castle Black. Lord Clay, in more than 3 hours, the entire army will be able to leave the city. The 800 heavy armored knights in the forward line have already completed their formation. A messenger came to report to Clay. Clay was stationed in front of the city gate and made eye contact with every soldier who left the city. Although this was just a trivial matter in normal times, on the battlefield, there was no such thing. Little things. The outside scouts of the savage camp had long been stunned by the interception troops that suddenly left the city last night. A night of brutal fighting had turned Mance Rayder into a complete blind man regarding the Great Wall. Due to his inefficient command system, the savage leader in charge of the scouts slept too hard last night and only found out about it this morning. However, he didn't realize anything and wandered towards Mance Ray. Go that way. In a chaotic meeting, the savage leaders quarreled over supplies and next arrangements. Some were hoping for peace talks, while others were blushing and going to attack the city. They were quarreling with each other. In this way, the quarrel lasted until almost noon, when Mance Rayder, who was extremely heavy-headed, finally had time to ask the sleepy wildling leader about the scouts. When he got the answer, the Savage King, who was once a member of the Night Watch and knew what a battlefield was in the south, instantly turned ugly. Just as he was about to ask carefully, he heard a loud noise outside the tent and the faint sound of horse hooves. His heart trembled. Mance Rayder had already rushed out of the tent while the other wildling leaders were stunned. However, it was already too late. The heavily armored knights under the banners of direwolves and mermaids were already urging their horses with all their strength, and were charging towards the camp. This group of savages did not expect the group charge of the cavalry they met, so they were not even prepared for a single horse or trap to block the cavalry charge. Therefore, the horses' hooves splashed with broken snow and the sword was unsheathed. Amidst the shouts of "For the North, for Lord Clay," the forward 800 heavy armored cavalry rushed into the center of the savage camp. They don't need to work hard to slash with their swords. Their only role is to rush forward and crush all enemies in front of them. Behind them, Clay's main force of 3,200 cavalry formed a fan-shaped formation and charged towards the savage camp. They were the main force reaping lives. Chapter 194 Death of Mance Rayder on the real battlefield. There are few, so-called armies that fight to the death. Everyone carries one head on two shoulders. When the threat of death is in front of you, the first reaction must be run. An army with a little training and a common pursuit may be stronger, but its strength is limited. And if it is Mance Rayder's gang, they fight daily battles with a dozen people. As a result, this battlefield became very interesting, because most of the wildlings screamed in terror and fled towards the back of Mance Rayder's camp, while a small number of those who were not clear-headed could not even hold it. Things called weapons screamed for resistance. The problem is that these are not the people who are really needed on the battlefield. The army is a sophisticated machine. What it needs is the kind of soldiers who fear death, but have the courage to come together to face the enemy. Unfortunately, the soldiers standing in the rear on horseback I didn't see such a person. The northern cavalry came over like an overwhelming force. Wherever the horses' hooves stepped, all the slow-running savages left a bright red color on the white snow and turned into corpses on the ground that gradually lost their warmth. There was no resistance, to be precise. There was resistance, but it was all ineffective. In the duel between the two armies, individual bravery seemed even smaller than a grain of sand in the ocean. You can roar, you wave the weapon you think is the most sophisticated at will, you curse your enemies, you curse the opponents who rush towards you, you do everything you can, but this does not prevent the knight in full armor from charging on horseback, using the high-speed movement of the horse, to gently wave the steel sword in his hand that is many times more sophisticated than your weapon, and then, lightly across your neck, pain, severe, heartbreaking pain, the blood bursting out of the heart, flying in the air, bringing up a burst of white mist in the cold world. But that's it. No one cares about your last words before death talking about something. Because you are too weak and not worthy of being remembered by your opponent, and being weak is the most shameful sin in the world. Lord Clay, the first line of defense of the savages, has been breached by us. A large number of savages have begun to flee. They are simply vulnerable. The soldier who came to report the news carefully thought about the appropriate words, and reported to his commander what he thought was a child's play battle. Clay said nothing and asked, "How is the offensive of the left and right armies? If we use these big pliers and don't twist off a large piece of flesh, people will look down on us." It went very smoothly. The troops led by the two adults have already penetrated their rear from the east and west directions. According to the news they reported back, most of them are old people and children with little fighting ability. The scout didn't mention women. Clay understood what this meant. It seemed that Mance Rayder had indeed given women a stick and used them as so-called spearwives. After thinking about it, Clay nodded and issued an order. "Take my order to the front of the army, and tell them that as long as men resist, let go and kill without mercy, I will resist all the sins caused by killing. As for women, try not to kill. Of course, in the premise is to ensure the safety of our soldiers' lives. If you are stubborn, don't show mercy. I don't hope that when they come back, there will be no blood on the sword and the edge of the sword will not be blunted. Your will, Lord Clay." The scout agreed, and after giving a military salute, he immediately rode forward and rushed forward. In this army, Clay's orders were like oracles and could not be violated. Following Crema, Commander-in-Chief Mormont, who had been observing the war, waited until the scout disappeared and asked aloud, "Clay, why do you want to keep women? I noticed that you didn't distinguish between old people and children at all, only gender. Can you help me, an old man, clear up my confusion?" "Young General." Clay looked back at the Commander-in-Chief of the Night Watch, who was dressed in pitch black. The old guy sent 300 troops this time. This was almost the entire main force that the castle could move. It was a huge investment. Moreover, in the previous scout cleaning war, the terrain map outside the wall was also a free help provided by this group of people. For this reason, Clay reluctantly answered Commander-in-Chief Mormont's question. "Commander-in-Chief, what do you think you would do if you were in my position? How would you deal with these savages who are doomed to fail?" Commander-in-Chief Mormont has actually considered this question a long time ago. After all, he deals with these wildlings every day. He replied, "If they want to live, they must lay down their weapons and swear allegiance to His Majesty Robb Stark." After that, I will temporarily place them in the land grant and guard them first. Clay nodded, his pupils reflected the snowflakes in the sky and whispered, then what? Then I will move them in batches to various places in the north, coordinate with His Majesty Robert, give them land, and let them gradually adapt to the life of ordinary people in the north. Commander-in-Chief Mormont's method cannot be said to be wrong, at least in terms of thinking, but it is somewhat idealistic. The wild people have survived outside the Great Wall for such a long time, relying on catches, fruits, and prey to survive. There is just no way to carry out large-scale agricultural cultivation. Give them farm tools, allocate them a piece of wasteland, and then leave them alone? Expecting them to turn barren hills into fertile fields with just a hoe is simply the inertial thinking of people like Lord Commander Mormont, who were born into noble families and who actually do not know the situation at the bottom. If this method continues to develop, the final result will definitely be that these savages cannot survive on the land and are forced to take the initiative to abandon the land and start the $0 purchase business again. At that time, Clay can sit in White Harbor and watch the entire Northern Territory stage a high-quality production of bandit suppression. Commander-in-Chief Mormont stopped talking because he realized that the commander of the army in front of him might not buy his plan at all. Although in his heart he thought his plan was the most reasonable, he had no choice but to ask Croton. Ray's thoughts. Clay's answer is very simple and can be summed up in one sentence. He wants the wildlings to disappear completely from the land of Westeros. The easiest way to destroy a nation is to kill the vast majority of men in the nation and snatch away all their women. When the women of this nation give birth to children for the men of the new nation, the original nation can be declared extinct from a macro perspective, because there are no new people who will identify themselves with that nation. Yes, Clay had no intention of letting these savages go from the beginning. He was not the virgin, and he would not let the savages in, which would eventually backfire on him. For him, a great nobleman, the best way is to let the savages come in. It ceased to exist. In the entire White Harbor and Twin River City areas, the population will inevitably decrease after the war, the stability and war support crossed out, and the people's hearts will inevitably become unstable. It's easy, I'll send you women. Who is single? Come, as long as you support my Manderly family and dare to fight on the battlefield for my Manderly family, I will send you a woman when you get back, and I guarantee that I can give you a child. Don't think that all those who die in the war are men. In fact, the mortality rate of old, weak, women and children who are unable to protect themselves is much higher than that of adult men, unless it is the kind of country that has no brains to send troops to die. Lord Clay, the savages may have really disobeyed the gods and asked you to deal with them. It may be better to bleed once and for all rather than to continue and bleed endlessly. Commander-in-Chief Mormont was silent for a long time, and he had no idea that the snowflakes were already covering his gray eyebrows. Finally, he faintly uttered these words and looked at Clay, not knowing what to say. The fate of the savages was determined after their scouts were annihilated. The central camp, where Mance Rayder was located, only resisted for about 20 minutes before being defeated by the heavy cavalry who had already charged through. Mance Rayder was knocked up by the warhorse and fell to the ground coughing blood. He actually wanted to say something, but these red-eyed northern cavalry didn't care at all. So, the king of the wildlings now became a puddle of mud in the snow. Fortunately, a loyal subordinate revealed Mance Rayder's identity, otherwise he would have been abandoned in the snow and together with his dead people, would have been frozen in the snow forever. Oh, no, when the White Walkers come, he will most likely become a member of the zombie army. Then, he will be shot through the body by a dragon crystal arrow from nowhere, and then turn into a complete corpse. Who remembers who Mance Rayder is? The savage no longer exists, so who will he be king for? When the weak Mance Rayder was twisted to kneel in front of Crema, Clay took a look at the savage king who looked like an ordinary middle-aged man. He was not even interested in talking and waved his hand directly. Just drag it on and kill him. No. I am Mance Rayder, the king of the wildlings you have been looking for. We are free people. Why are you judging me? Clay glanced at him and signaled the soldiers to stop. He dismounted and came to Mance Rayder. He drew out the long sword from his waist. Remember my name and tell it to your god. Of course I can judge you, former Night's Watch. I, Clay of House Manderly, sentence you to death as a deserter in my name. The long sword was swung down and the head flew up. Eddard Stark killed the deserters of the Night's Watch in this way, and today, Clay did the same thing. This is treason. Mance Rayder. Clay looked at his head and said softly. Chapter 195 Gift from the Red-Robed Visitor. Clay didn't want to interrogate the so-called Savage King, because there was no need. This guy has no intention of talking properly at all. And even if Clay drags him into a small dark room and gives him a Yakshi seal, the information he gets may not be accurate. Think about where the information about Melisandre, the king of the wildlings, came from. Didn't someone below report it to him? This itself is information that has been processed layer by layer. It is understood and organized in Melisandre's mind, and finally relayed to Clay. You just want to know how big the deviation is. Therefore, instead of asking him and getting wrong information and ultimately delaying the matter, it is better to ask these savages directly. Anyway, Clay believes that he will have many prisoners in this battle. Not everyone, under the shadow of death, can still calmly insist on freedom without bending the knee to Clay. Everyone is afraid of death. Clay doesn't believe what tricks these people can play for themselves. The outcome of the war was doomed from the beginning. When Earl Glover, covered in blood, came to him on a war horse early the next morning, Clay knew that his mission for this trip had been completed. He glanced at Earl Glover, who understood what his commander meant, cleared his throat, and began to report the results to Clay. Lord Clay, according to your order, I led 1,000 people to move quickly towards the north. As you expected, the savages collapsed at the first touch and fled to the northeast. When my troops appeared, many of them were stunned. In place. My visual inspection at the time was that the 1,000 of us blocked at least 5,000 people. I originally thought it would be a tough battle, because I felt that the trapped beasts had the strongest fighting capacity. However, we still think highly of these people. They are probably very nervous. When they were charged by your army, they became frightened. A few people with abnormal brains rushed over. After we killed them, they am overwhelmed. Later, we faced off like this until your army rushed over, and then Earl Glover spread his hands, with a very strange expression on his face, and said, we have calculated that you now have more than 30,000 prisoners, ranging in age from newborns to 50 years old. You see, Clay frowned. He had not expected this development. He originally thought that the savages would resist fiercely. After all, once the resistance failed, they would become kneeling people. Fortunately, these people knelt so smoothly it actually made Clay unable to deal with it. His original plan was for the savages to resist fiercely and then eat them one by one, knocking out their spirit, finally forcing them to surrender. How's our damage? Hey, Lord Clay, you are underestimating our brothers in the north. That is, the elite Lannister can cause us a little trouble. Just these people, 100 people can't get together a sword. What can they do? Threaten? We later cleaned up the battlefield and counted, and we found that less than 50 of us died in total. The rest were all lightly or seriously injured, and most of them were blunt force injuries. They just need to be nursed back to health. How many of them are dead? Don't tell me that they are all dead. I saw a large wave of people running towards the northwest. We didn't arrange anyone there. Yes, there were not many people who died directly in the hands of our cavalry, not even more than 10,000 people. Later we interrogated 2 savage leaders who surrendered, and they both confessed. In fact, in the hands of Mance Rayder just over 70,000 people. Of these 70,000 people, another 20,000 are divided into Eastwatch and Shadow Tower. They are probably preparing to cross the Great Wall in batches. Clay nodded. He understood that he only had 50,000 enemies in front of him. He killed 10,000 people, captured 30,000 people, ran away 10,000 people, and there were 20,000 people separated on both sides. By destroying the core that the savages had worked so hard to create, Mance Rayder, the savages' command system actually ceased to exist. In this battle, my side had an exchange ratio of 1 to 200. If it had been elsewhere, I would have been arrested as a war criminal. However, now, this big victory has made the threat of the savages a reality. S no longer exists. Although only 10,000 people were killed on the battlefield, in fact, the significance was much more than that. The reason why the Night's Watch was nervous and rushed to Winterfell to bring in reinforcements was actually because Mance Rayder, the former Night's Watch, had crushed 100,000 wildlings into a ball. Therefore, the Night's Watch Legion had to face a group of people. Big Chuo. But now, the leader who all the tribes obeyed is gone, and the troops of the various savages are still scattered in all directions. There is no possibility for them to unite again. From now on, there may still be a lot of savages, but in the eyes of Clay and the Night Watch Legion, they are just countless tiny grains of sand. Without the help of external forces, no matter how large the quantity of sand is, it is impossible to build a strong city. A pile of scattered sand poses no threat. Oh, by the way, Master Clay, during the battle outside the wall, we met a strange woman. We couldn't grasp it, so we brought her here. Do you want to meet her? Strange woman can't grasp it? The corner of Clay's mouth twitched slightly. What do you mean if you can't grasp it? Just leave it to me. Is this why I'm here to help you deal with trouble? What woman? Why do you call her weird? Well, that woman is wearing a red robe. It's such a cold day and we all cover ourselves up like bears. She's wearing that red cannon and she's not cold at all. Also, she claims to be the messenger of the Lord of Light. According to the will of her god, she wants to see you by name. She also brought a few captives with her, saying that as soon as you see the captives, you will see her. Okay, bring me the prisoner first. Clay took a deep breath. He already knew who was coming. No, eldest sister, shouldn't you stay on Dragonstone and be Stannis' royal advisor? Why are you here with me? Moreover, it seems that he has never dealt with Melisandre, right? Why does she know him directly? Clay didn't believe it because of other things, such as Stannis bringing a letter to him. The reason why this witch came to him must be related to the magic in his body. Speaking of which, when I returned to the north this time, the three-eyed crow hadn't appeared for a long time. It couldn't be that the internet was not good, right? The magic power was not enough to contact me, right? It wasn't until Clay saw the twitching savage captives that he realized he had made a stupid mistake. These people with light green magic flowing all over their bodies are shape-changers, a magical unit unique to the people of the north. They can control animals for reconnaissance, such as eagles, wolves, shadow lynxes, etc. They came here in a hurry and completely forgot about this incident. Clay looked at the green magic mixed with red fire magic and understood what Melisandre meant. This was a meeting gift for herself, which meant that she did herself a favor. She used a method she didn't know to deal with these magic units in advance, which made her raid a great success. Go, bring that woman to me. Clay shouted to the soldiers waiting outside the tent. The soldiers looked at each other, and after thinking about something, one of them ran quickly in one direction. The troubles are endless, can't we stop calming down? Clay rubbed his brows with a headache. He really didn't want to deal with these nagging guys, because this was something he couldn't control. For example, Melisandre, the messenger of the Lord of Light, came to him, and she probably found her own reasons with the three-eyed crow. Looking at it the other way around, her Ignisil also used fire magic. After waiting for an unknown amount of time, while Clay was frowning and thinking, a hoarse and magnetic female voice came into Clay's ears. It seems that you need help, Agent of Ability God Chapter 196. It's okay to cheat. The same title, the same annoying sound, but unlike Lord Brynden River's voice that sounded like the bark of a dead tree breaking, Melisandre's voice seemed to have a unique charm that made people couldn't help but listen carefully. Clay turned around and looked at the door of the tent. A plump and tall figure was leaning on the curtain of the tent. His beautiful figure under the thin red robe made people think. Clay raised his eyes and looked at the angular face. The magic had given her infinite beauty, but he didn't know how much reality would remain when the magic faded. In Clay's vision, the red-robed woman herself was like a candle that kept burning. A wave of light and heat swept toward Clay. This was definitely not a good intention, but a test of himself. With a cold snort in his heart, Clay squinted his eyes and controlled the magic power in his body to cover his body. The next second, the scorching power from Arya was wrapped around him. Clay felt it coming out. They tried hard to get into his body, but they were blocked by the magic power on his body. The two just looked at each other silently. In a dimension that others could not see, the surging magic power there is offense and defense against each other. About 2 minutes later, Melisandre saw that Clay's magic defense was flawless and left no loopholes for herself. She finally gave up using this method. Her jewel-like eyes slightly curved and she chuckled. It seems that the person I'm looking for is right. It's you, Clay Mandler. The power of fire given by our Lord can't do anything to you. This really puzzles and surprises me. So Melisandre looked into Clay's deep eyes and spoke in a faint tone, as if in her ears. Are you my enemy? Or my friend? Clay ignored her and sat down in his seat. He nodded at the table and motioned for Melisandre to sit down, and said that he has always been a person who likes to take the initiative in negotiations and does not allow others to lead the conversation. Friend or foe, depending on your purpose, ma'am. Clay has known Melisandre's identity for a long time, but he can't directly reveal her identity. Otherwise, if she thinks that he has been targeting her for a long time, or that Arya is behind her, things will spiral out of control. Let me introduce myself. My name is Melisandre. As for my identity, you must be very clear about it. Melisandre said slowly. Clay nodded. His eyes stayed on the two snow-white hills, the bright red blood-colored gems. If the other parts of Melisandre's body were flames, then this place, like exploding magma. Yeah, I didn't expect that the messenger of the King of Light would actually find this place. This place is the territory of the old gods. Your power should be suppressed here. That crow told you? Is it important? All I need to know is that you are the messenger of the Lord of Light. There are many in this world, and there are many red temples in Essos. Otherwise, a mess. Melisandre, you come alone. Meeting me is not a wise decision. Regarding Clay's words, Melisandre pursed her lips and neither denied nor refuted. This was true, but it was not entirely correct. You won't, because you don't trust the crow and the gods of this land. Am I right, agent of the gods? Clay waved his hands irritably. with a very obvious indifference in his tone. "If you don't want me to chop off your head right now, you'd better put away this strange name. I have a name. If you want to call me something else, I can give you the one I like." "Okay, Clay Manderly, if you insist, then I will grant your wish. After all, I am the one who came to find you, right?" Melisandre leaned forward slightly and tried her best to show her charm to Clay. Clay had no moral obsession, so he didn't look away at all. His eyes wandered in the ravine once, and then he looked back. He has never objected to having something with a beautiful woman, as long as she can bring him substantial benefits, and Daenerys is the product of this logic. We have all come to this dirty world full of betrayal and murder, and if we continue to pursue true love, what else is this but stupidity? Okay, let's talk about the gossip later. Now a mess. Melisandre, tell us your purpose. After thinking about it, Clay added, "Oh, by the way, thank you for the help you provided to my army. The North will remember your help." "Oh, I'm not here to help anyone from the North. Remember, I'm here to help you. Moreover, I don't like the smell of these people, so I put a little bit of my lord's power into their bodies. Their own magic power is disordered, who can blame them?" Clay smiled a salty smile, ignored the topic, and waited for Melisandre to reveal her purpose of coming to see him. Melisandre's red eyes lit up slightly. Of course, this might also be Clay's illusion. She just heard her say, "Clay Manderly, have you ever heard of such a prophecy?" Melisandre's red lips opened slightly, and she said word by word, "After a long summer, when the stars cry blood and cold covers the earth, Azor Ahai will be reborn from the land of smoke and salt, holding the flaming sword Lightbringer, fighting against Aror's enemies, the White Walkers, to save the world." Clay had certainly heard of this prophecy. In fact, in the end, he did not figure out who Azor Ahai was. Stannis, Daenerys, Jon Snow. What? Nothing, I have heard of this language, Lady Melisandre. Clay just subconsciously read out the candidates he had guessed in his mind. After all, prophecies are like this, and anyone who meets some of the conditions may try their best to meet other conditions. Melisandre only vaguely heard Stannis' name, but Clay's voice was too soft and she didn't hear the rest of the words clearly. Since Clay didn't want to say it, she knew it was useless to ask. "If you have heard this language, then, Your Majesty the Dragon King, who do you think will be the reincarnation of Azor Ahai?" Melisandre's smile was sly and her tone was soft, but what she said suddenly shocked Clay. His palm subconsciously pressed on the sword at his waist, but after thinking about it, he was relieved. Sure enough, Melisandre didn't challenge Clay's patience and said the next sentence directly. "Don't be too nervous, Clay. My lord's power allowed me to see you soaring on the dragon's back in the flames. Damn it, why are you all in full view of the picture? I feel so embarrassed when you are like this." Clay cursed in his heart. The three-eyed crow is like this. In the north where the power of the old god is shrouded, as long as the crow can go, it is within the scope of his vision. The priestess of Aror is similar. She is riding a dragon. Even a quiet handsome man can be spied on. Clay was very speechless, but he couldn't help it. Neither of these guys knew that he, the agent of the power god, was actually a polished commander, and they couldn't figure out his own details, so they were so polite to him. "Ms. Melisandre, there is no need for us to test each other here. What exactly do you want to say?" Clay was a little annoyed. This woman was talking nonsense, but it didn't fit into the topic. If conditions hadn't allowed, Clay would have slapped her plump chassis. There was no room for her to talk so much nonsense. Understanding the impatience in Clay's eyes, Melisandre remembered the figure she had seen in the flames entangled with magic capable of both ice and fire magic, and Meiji did not continue. She took a deep breath, her plump breasts contracted slightly. Melisandre looked into Clay's eyes, trying to find eye contact. "Clay Manderly, I want to know what agreement the three-eyed raven made with you." Squinting his eyes slightly, Clay didn't ask how she knew. His determined tone showed that this matter was not a guess at all. In this case, there was no need to deny it, just admit it. The interesting thing is that the priestess of Aror asked herself the three-eyed crow, the agent of the old gods, about the specific content of the agreement. What exactly did she want to do? Chapter 197 Ice and Fire Bud. This is the territory of the old gods. Going further north is the territory of your master Aror's mortal enemy, the cold god. Are you sure you want to talk to me about this here? Maybe every move we make now is influenced by something. Watching it, Clay raised a finger and pointed at the top of the tent. His meaning was very clear. If he said it here, wouldn't it be the same as telling the three-eyed crow directly? This is not good. Furthermore, I have to remind you that these guys you crippled are, to a certain extent, from the same camp as the three-eyed crow. I'm afraid he won't like the way you greet him. Melisandre glanced at the half-dead skin changers. The smile on her lips did not change at all, and her delicate cheeks did not show even a trace of worry. "Don't worry about me. The three-eyed crow doesn't dare to spy on me. His eyes dare to look directly at me, which is equivalent to directly observing our Lord Arya. In that case, my lord's light and heat will bring him unimaginable things. Pain. The woman with long copper-colored hair stretched out a white palm and tried to find Clay's right hand on the table, but unfortunately, the flexible right hand escaped the witch's clutches. Pouring her lips slightly, Melisandre was a little confused. The young man in front of her obviously spent more time on her chest than other parts of her body. Melisandre knew very well what was going on in the mind of a man of this age. According to her preconceptions, Clay wouldn't hide at all, but the reality is that Clay hid, and Melisandre never thought this was so-called shyness. Do you expect a person who is so prolific on the battlefield to kill anyone regardless of age or sex, as long as he resists, to be shy? This is simply not true. Looking into Clay's unruffled eyes, Melisandre's calm breathing suddenly suffocated. She realized that the bastard in front of her was probably acting with her, and that he was just pretending to be obsessed with her body. No matter what identity Melisandre is, she is still a woman, and women are undoubtedly very annoyed when faced with men pretending to be interested in their bodies. The unpleasant look on her face disappeared for a moment, and Melisandre stared at Clay, who was sitting there as silent as a sculpture, and sighed slightly in her heart. In the countless journeys she has taken, every time she spreads the faith of the Lord of Light, the most distressing thing is the inexperienced person in front of her. You say your thing and I will listen to mine. You do whatever you want and I do whatever I want. Anyway, just don't agree with it. Let's not waste time a mess. Melisandre, I can tell you about the agreement between the old god's agent and me, but before that, I first need to know, what can you bring to me? Clay pointed to the map of Westeros on the table and said very calmly, after all, everything has a hidden price tag. If you need to get something beneficial to you from me, then you need to be the first to show your sincerity. After a long time, in the tent that had been silent since Clay said this, Melisandre's slightly tired voice finally sounded, Clay Manderly, you really have no grace at all. But it's no wonder. You were able to get into such a situation in Essos. Now these fools with crowns in Westeros, it's already on your chessboard, right? Grace is not for people like us, a mess. Melisandre. As for the crown, wouldn't it be a ridiculous thing if something made of a pile of gold was called a crown? Clay chuckled and shook his head, lightly tapped his forehead with his right hand, and said lightly, as long as I want it, it will appear above my head at any time, but I don't want to do it now. The two of them didn't bring up the topic again. Melisandre went around for a long time and made no progress with the impeccable Clay. Finally she chose to tell the true purpose of her trip. She said, Clay, if my companions and I, under the guidance of my lord's will honor you as king, help you ascend the throne, and unify the entire Westeros, in exchange, your new kingdom will accept my lord. How about the glory? Comparing the conditions of the three-eyed raven, you can clearly understand what Melisandre means, which is to bring the entire Westeros into the sphere of influence of the Lord of Light. You have a big appetite. Let's put aside the seven gods' religion for the time being. Their spines have been broken by the royal power a long time ago and they cannot make any trouble. But what are you going to do in the north and beyond the Great Wall? Clay's fingers were tapping on the table, with a strange expression on his face. The old gods have been wandering throughout the north and beyond the Great Wall for thousands of years, and have existed even longer. I don't think your religion will be recognized here. Why? You red-robed monks go down to the villages to provide services to the farmers. Show fireworks? Also, if I do this, it will be tantamount to going against the old god world. I guess you should know where my roots are on this continent, right? The last question, what are you going to do with the guys outside the wall? They are the mortal enemies of your master Arya, not mine. If it weren't for the fact that the servants it creates are impossible to coexist with, there is no way I would be able to sit down and drink with them. 1 cup. In fact, in comparison, the plan proposed by the three-eyed crow is more constructive, because according to that set of plans, the cold god nests outside the wall, the old god still rules the north and his new kingdom serves as a buffer zone to block the wall. On the way west from Arya. And Melisandre's request is actually equivalent to going directly to Chen Bing's doorstep. It would be strange if nothing happens. The cold god will definitely be destroyed. Clay Manderly, don't doubt our lord's determination. You know very well what the cold god's servants are. This is very important to the human kingdom that you value. A deadly threat. Then I'm very surprised. Arya attaches great importance to the cold god and treats them as mortal enemies. Then why didn't you eliminate them earlier and instead came to find me? Do you know? In the eyes of a soldier like me, this is a sign of your extreme weakness. Of course, my lord discovered that an individual like you who can accommodate both fire magic and use evil cold magic seems to be able to teach it to others. This seems to be the case for your guards who are fighting with you. Clay suddenly realized that this was because of his identity as a demon hunter. Arya was interested in this form of magic that was completely different from the mainstream magic in the world of ice and fire. It's understandable, but Arya probably can't understand why fire magic and cold magic can coexist in the same person, etc. Clay suddenly realized something. If someone like him existed, wouldn't it mean Arya, the Lord of Light, and the entire Red God religion claim a dualistic worldview, that is, ice and fire are irreconcilable enemies, and the justice represented by Arya will inevitably destroy the evil represented by the cold god. If we continue to deduce this, after the cold god, the greatest enemy, is eliminated, will he become Arya's next hunting target? Quite simply, the coexistence of ice and fire magic among witchers, doesn't it just show that Arya's dualistic worldview is nonsense? Ice and fire can coexist. Clay stared at Melisandre's face thoughtfully. This chapter is late, kowtow. Chapter 198. The real world. After Melisandre finished speaking, Clay understood why this woman came to him. To put it simply, the dualistic relationship between the Lord of Light and the God of Cold actually makes sense to a certain extent. As a messenger of Arya, Melisandre's body is filled with violent fire magic. When she came to the north, to be precise, the closer she got to the north of Westeros, the more her power was suppressed. Even the recovery of magic brought by the dragon's reappearance could not weaken this feeling. Therefore, according to this logic, as long as Arya himself does not die, his so-called servant priests will actually have no impact on the cold god north of the wall. Even in this place where the sky is full of snow, the high-level priests, are no match for the theoretical servants of the cold god like the White Walkers. If they dare to appear in the land of eternal winter far away from the Great Wall, they are tantamount to being in the darkness. Candle. However, being free from this opposing magic system, Clay and his 5 demon hunter guards did not have this problem at all. Clay came outside the wall and was not affected at all. Melisandre or Arya, rather than wanting to support her in ascending to the throne, so-called resisting the cold god's invasion, the more real idea is probably to let the demon hunters she created, the version of the world of ice and fire, serve as outsiders. Half-Finder. Even more extreme, they want to use demon hunters, magic warriors that can theoretically be mass-produced, to hunt the servants of the cold god, led by the White Walkers outside the Great Wall and weaken the cold god's power. Therefore, when Melisandre or Arya realized this, they immediately came to find him. The mention of Azor Ahai before was probably just to tease him. You have been appointed as the hero to save the world by our King of Light. Why don't you cooperate with us? That's probably the logic. It's a pity that the calculation is very loud. The fact that they can say this means that at least at this time, they have not realized that they will inevitably go against Clay Manderly later. This is good, because it means that Clay has enough time to take advantage of both sides. The last thing Clay wants to see is that both sides think that their system has impacted their existence, so they join forces and kill them first. Say it yourself. Now, Clay's wings are not yet full-fledged. He has already grown fur and can circle the sky a few times, but there is still a long way to go before he can truly fly into the sky. Now that he really wants to go to war with the army of the dead, Clay really doesn't have any good means. He can't call his 4 dragons over again, can he? Now the size of a dragon, flying over rashly, is this to let the Night King win another gold medal in the javelin? Clay couldn't do such a stupid head-sending maneuver. Originally, the Great Wall of Despair was fine. The magic barrier kept out the legions of the dead, and they were not allowed to step outside. The stable group belonged to them. However, the white-haired queen who now belonged to her family had to send a dragon over to defeat the magic with magic. Then, what happened next was disgusting. The Great Wall of Despair was pierced from East Sea, and the army of the dead crossed the Great Wall and set foot on the land of the north. The first to bear the brunt were the unlucky ones along the route. So, in the final hall of Hearth City, the White Walkers showed everyone a wave of performance art, which reflected their unique aesthetics as intelligent creatures. Okay, I understand. I can only say that Miss Melisandre, the conditions you proposed are very tempting, but let me ask, what about Stannis Baratheon, who you supported before? Is the flag, the crown of the stag, is burning with fire? Regarding this question, the priestess of Arya obviously had a clue. She didn't care and gave the answer without thinking. Stannis Baratheon has never been a true believer of the Lord of Light. During the time I have been with him, I have deeply understood this. And a mortal who is not a believer of our Lord naturally cannot be. Azor Ahai is reincarnated, then he has no value. Well, Azor Ahai, Helcaon, Ital, Neferian, Shadow Hunter Edric, there are indeed many names referring to this hero, are you right, Lady Melisandre? Melisandre frowned. Of course she knew who the names Clay mentioned were. They were the names of the heroes who ended the long night in the legends of other regional cultures in Essos. This was precisely what the Church of the Red God did not tolerate. The reason why a hero is because he himself is a rare thing. There is only one, and he has a monopoly position among the creators. Once this monopoly is broken, many heroes will appear at once. Then, the original hero will fall from the altar, become worthless, and no one will worship him anymore. Clay Mandler. What on earth do you mean? These words are quite harsh to us. I'm just telling you, don't fool me with any prophecies. I don't believe in those things at all. Only what I beat down with my own hands truly belongs to me. Am I clear enough? Clay's tone is not good, and there are strong religious traditions in various parts of Westeros, so this kind of prophecy is very popular, and people like Stannis Baratheon who once stood at the top of power are not immune to it. Melisandre sighed inwardly and felt a little headache at the same time. This was the first time she had seen a guy like Clay who was unsophisticated and did not give any respect to gods like Arya and the Lord of Light. But considering that the other person is another god whom she doesn't know, the agent in the human world, Melisandre barely feels that she can understand Clay's thoughts. Well, Clay Mandler, since you don't agree with what I said, what are your conditions? Melisandre is ready to take a step back. The most important thing for her to come this time is to ensure that Clay will not have deeper contact with the forces of the old gods. Although the old god and his representative, the three-eyed crow, are still on the opposite side of the cold god in most cases, that is because the cold god and his servants always want to encroach on his territory. Similarly, they are also very wary of the priests of Arya, the king of light, but there is still a weak 7 gods in the south, so there is no overt conflict for the time being. Now, the emergence of Clay Mandler has brought new variables to this situation. Clay himself represents a brand new divine power in their eyes. If this power turns to the old gods, forms an alliance with the three-eyed raven, and slowly restores the faith of the old gods in Westeros, then Arya's goal of assimilating to Westeros will become much more difficult. And this is the result that the red-robed monks like Melisandre and Thoros least want to see. The three-eyed crow was hiding in a tree hole and lingering, but Clay was alive and kicking, vaguely mastering the most powerful armed forces in the entire 7 kingdoms. More importantly, this kid took the pill that they originally planned to invest in. Nellis was abducted. It was after Melisandre learned that Daenerys came to Westeros with Clay that she immediately decided to leave Dragonstone and completely abandon Stannis Baratheon's contact with Clay. Conditions? You mean the conditions for giving up the agreement with that crow and cooperating with you instead? Yes, you can understand that. Okay, let me be frank, I don't care what your master wants to do, but if it goes against my purpose of unifying the entire Westeros, then you are my enemy. This is natural. We support you to sit on the throne. A king who understands things in his mind is much better than those who just get drunk. He will not kick us out without listening to what we say. Go to the palace. Also, I ask you to completely give up contact with any lord in the entire continent of Westeros from now on. If I find that your people are still contacting them, then our agreement will be directly void. Yes, Thoros will leave King's Landing soon, as will other colleagues. Finally, at this stage, I do not allow you to spread the teachings of the King of Light within my territory. Not now. Remember, put away your ambitions. If you raise something, find someone who is obedient. If you think about it, your Red Temple may not be safe. Melisandre frowned and was silent for a while, then whispered, Is this a threat from you? Clay Mandler, you have to know that we are here to help you. Help me? Without you, I can still win the war, but I have to pay more. But for me, it is acceptable, but you, on the other hand, want too much. Clay pointed out the crux of the problem coldly. This is equivalent to bringing money into the company. You have money, but you can't ask everyone to listen to you right away. If this were the case, who would cooperate with you? They would be doomed to be devoured. Everyone is smart and not stupid. In fact, Melisandre has no good solution at all, because Clay is too strong and has a very advantageous position in the negotiation. If they can't win over Clay, they can only destroy him. They can't watch him cooperate with the old gods and completely seal the entrance of Arboxy. Then let's take a step back. You must promise not to cooperate with the old god again, and not let his faith cross the border on a large scale. This is our bottom line. Yes, although this is included in the original agreement, there is no rush, so in principle I agree with this. In fact, when Clay originally negotiated with the Three-Eyed Crow, this was not the case at all. The Three-Eyed Crow's purpose was to maintain the status quo, and then encourage Clay to fight against Arya's forces. But since Melisandre said so, Clay just lied as a favor and showed his sincerity, even though he didn't have to pay anything. In the original memory, Daenerys was actually a pawn for Aroth's advancement to the west. When she takes over all of Westeros with the help of Melisandre, the Church of the Red God will most likely replace the 7 gods. After all, when Aegon landed, the church caused a lot of trouble for the Targaryen dynasty. However, the first Targaryen dynasty was not strong enough at the time to defeat the Church of the Seven Gods, which had a large tree and deep roots. There is no other choice but to join if you can't beat him. Aegon's coronation ceremony was presided over by the Archbishop. But by the time Daenerys arrived, all of Westeros had been destroyed and St. Baelor's Cathedral, the headquarters of the Seven Gods, had been destroyed by the wise Cersei. It became natural for the Church of the Red God to become the new state religion. However, who knew that Jon Snow had a heart attack and stabbed his beloved aunt in the heart, causing the Red God to become paralyzed? Finally, the spokesperson of the old gods, the new generation of the three-eyed raven incarnation, Robb Stark, sat on the throne in a wheelchair, which meant that the old god faction completely won the battle. With the power of the Red God, he killed the cold god servants and eliminated the threat behind his butt. Then he killed the Red God spokesperson with a single blow, ascended the throne himself, and harvested the final fruit of victory. How should I put it? From Clay's point of view, this guy is completely Yin-Ma, and there can be no more. Oh, by the way, my men told me that some strange guys appeared on the territory of the Cold God. They don't seem to be those hard-toothed servants of the Cold God. Did your master tell you this? Clay suddenly thought of something and turned to ask Melisandre. Strange guy? What do you mean? Everything outside the wall is filled with the breath of the Cold God. Except for the savages you just defeated, those are the servants of the Cold God. There will be no other intelligent life living here. That's it. Maybe the guys under my command made a false alarm. Don't mind it. Clay touched his chin and nodded. If his men were right, and the rangers who had escaped from death were also right, it means one thing. Aror's map hangs everywhere outside the wall. Black Shadow Part. Melisandre went over Clay's words in her mind, but she felt that this might be Clay, the military leader, who was misled by the wrong information brought by his men, so after thinking about it, she didn't take it too seriously. Superior. Melisandre, I'm wondering, is it really that cold in the north? If the cold god really dissipates, will it really snow all the time outside the Great Wall? Clay suddenly thought of a question. He had seen the map of the world of ice and fire. The location outside the Great Wall was not too far north. It was only such a small distance away. There was no reason why it would be so cold. But obviously, Clay's question had not been considered by the witch before. She thought carefully for a while and gave an answer that Clay was not very satisfied with. The cold god represents darkness, coldness, and death. Beyond the Great Wall, this is a land lacking light and heat. When the cold god dissipates, this place will definitely be much better. The speaker has no intention, but the listener has the intention. If so, wouldn't Aror and Cold God become the climate regulators of the entire world? Now that the cold god is gone, the temperature should rise everywhere? If that's the case, the areas outside the Great Wall and the northern border are comfortable, but what will happen to the south of Jinx? Are they all like Dorne? As for Dorne, well, it will probably result in a bunch of plain human jerky. If this inference is true, then the climate in Westeros, which is as capricious as the temper of an adolescent boy, has an explanation. Isn't this the result of the battle between Aror and the Cold God? The Cold God became stronger, so the long night fell. In the cold winter, the White Walkers moved on a large scale and began to attack the world of the living. When Aror was strong, the long summer came, Dorne was extremely hot, and the weather was smooth in other places. And if we extrapolate based on previous memories, that is to say, at this point in time, the power of the Cold God is stronger than Aror. This is interesting. If this is the case, Clay will have to reevaluate his current situation. On the surface, it is a battle between Stark, Lannister, Baratheon, and Targaryen, but in fact, the forces behind it are not simple. This chapter was written very slowly. In fact, when I was reading the original book and watching the TV series, the issue of gods behind the world of ice and fire was not actually mentioned, but they are everywhere throughout the story. Although the last episode of the TV series was terrible, Bran's last words were, "Otherwise, why do you think I did so much?" It's really interesting. Therefore, this chapter is actually for me, the author, to understand the operating logic behind the world of ice and fire from the same perspective as everyone else. Otherwise, some things will be very strange. There must be a reason for the Red God Church to come all the way to Westeros and do nothing, but encourage everyone to become the Cold God. They are not old enemies in dualism. Religion is religion, reality is reality, and no one is stupid. Also, the Stark family has been passed down for so many generations and there are so many people who can resonate with the old gods. Why did you choose Bran? Then, after all his previous brothers died, he was left to pick the peaches in the end. Apart from coincidence, this gives me a sense of deliberateness. This chapter can be regarded as my own interpretation. It would be impossible if I didn't write it. A song of ice and fire, pretending not to see the gods, would not be good. Chapter 199 Trophies Melisandre left anyway, at Clay's insistence. Clay doesn't like getting along with this kind of woman at all, because these magicians are all riddlers and are always unwilling to tell the truth, and Clay doesn't have the heart to guess what they are thinking. Clay promised that Melisandre would no longer cooperate with the forces of the old gods, but only he knew how to implement it. After the annoying Arya envoys completely left the Great Wall, Clay began to devote himself wholeheartedly to the aftermath of the battle beyond the wall. This battle actually yielded huge gains. After defeating Mance Raiders' main force head-on, Clay's cavalry chased them north for about a day and dispersed all the savage tribes with more than 1,000 people. Even Clay's side sent hundreds of people to tentatively chase the group of savages who fled to the Glacier Canyon on the west side. Unfortunately, due to the terrain, they lost their target, but this was harmless. After all the battles were over, a statistical report was sent to Clay's desk. Well, we brought back nearly 30,000 women of the right age in total. Not bad. It seems that the age structure of the savages is very young. Clay looked at the report, and of course he was surprised when he saw how many women were captured, because this number was indeed beyond his expectation. The tens of thousands of people on the front were divided into two groups, preparing to attack Eastwatch and the Shadow Tower, but they were blocked by the Clay cavalry. The two savage troops collapsed in the first battle, and these rough guys from the north under his own command, he did a very good job in capturing prisoners. But when Clay saw the male prisoners, the corner of his mouth twitched. The number was far less than the number of women. Clay even felt that his original order was probably a waste of expressions. These guys had planned this for a long time. Done. Lord Clay, we have basically finished interrogating the small tribe leaders of the savages. The few people who followed the Bolton family are pretty good at it. After a few tricks, those tough-talking guys fell to their knees faster than anyone else. Lord Glover's sturdy body was leaning in the chair opposite Clay, looking at the top of Clay's tent with a relaxed expression, holding a bottle of the Night's Watch collection from Lord Commander Mormont in his hand. Clay ignored Earl Glover's evil deeds. It was normal for him to relax a bit after the war. This was not a certain army in his memory. The army of this era did not commit robbery after the war. Son, Clay's Majesty is already very strict. Well, those leaders, after interrogation, were determined to be of no value. I killed them all and then set them on fire. Do you understand? Burn it. Why not dig a big pit and bury them all? It will save trouble. Earl Glover didn't know what was going on in the north. In fact, only Robb Stark and Commander-in-Chief Mormont knew the real purpose of Clay's coming up this time. The White Walkers are still a legend for most people in the north. Except for serving as guides during the previous war, the Night's Watch troops were strictly separated under the orders of Commander-in-Chief Clay and Mormont. The purpose of this is to keep the White Walkers secret for a while. After all, after this battle, Clay will have to lead the cavalry south. Not long ago, I received news that Robb Stark had led the infantry group south to the Gulf of Callan, preparing to join the White Harbor Army, and then stationed at the Twin City to wait for Clay's cavalry army to arrive. Robb Stark said in the letter that he sent the Marquis Bolton and Lord Severn to the Eagle's Nest with his mother's personal letter, hoping that Lysa Tully could send troops to help Robb Stark get revenge. After all, Eddard Stark had been the adopted son of Duke Arryn, and to some extent had a lot to do with the valley. Robb Stark believed that this was the best opportunity to persuade the Arryn Valley to join the war. Robb Stark did not discuss this action with Clay in advance at all. Although this letter had a consistent tone of discussion, in essence, it was actually a notification. Clay could imagine that in Robb Stark's mind, he was already the king, and there must have been many people instilling in his ears that the king did not need anyone's approval to make decisions. In fact, Clay had already expected this kind of thing to happen. He knew very well what power would turn a person into, but he didn't expect it to happen so quickly. Regarding Robb Stark's operation, if you purely look at Robb Stark's perspective, you are actually doing the right thing. The general direction of contacting the Arryn Valley is the right one, but the problem is, the person you sent is who? In the current valley, it is said that Lysa Tully is overseeing the country for Robert Arryn Jr. and has a somewhat similar behind-the-curtain administration, but in fact, Clay knows who has the real power. Now send Lord Bolton to a certain guy with a narrow smile. Well, he is very energetic. I really deserve to be you, Robb Stark. Upon seeing this letter, Clay wanted to immediately send people south to find Robb Stark and ask him to take back this stupid order. But just as he stood up, Clay thought about it and sat down again, went back. He couldn't stop Robb Stark from doing it because there was no reason. What could Clay say? The situation in the valley is not what you Robb Stark thought at all. Lysa Tully's love brain has been taken away by someone a long time ago. There is no way Lysa Tully can agree to your request. Or maybe the person you sent is not suitable at all. Earl Severn doesn't care for the moment. Roose Bolton is not a good guy. It's just that your Stark family is too strong now, and the Bolton family is just holding back. He may not even be convinced that you have met Eddard Stark, the father of the gods. It would be really strange for him to be convinced by a young boy like you. Clay knew very well that if he hadn't held all the cavalry power in the north, and his achievements on the battlefield were too brilliant, and he had been suppressing Roose Bolton from thinking wrongly, he would have jumped by now. The last reason is his own selfishness. If he still tries his best to help the Stark family, then in this war, the North will be almost invincible. In this case, if Clay takes action in the future, he will encounter too much resistance. After all, a leader who leads his own power to the top will definitely be recognized by most people, even if many things are not done by the leader. Now that the crown of invisibility has been worn, Clay will not be allowed to look back, and the Manderly Targaryen dynasty will never allow a divided North and Riverlands to appear on the territory of the kingdom. Dispersing his thoughts, Clay returned to the summary report in front of him. Theoretically speaking, Clay Mandler and his 5,000 men had completed their mission on the Great Wall. According to the previous agreement, in fact, what Clay should do at this time is to immediately go south, take the King's Road, and chase the infantry army led by King Robb Stark. But the interesting thing is that none of Clay's men, including Earl Glover, mentioned this matter, because before that, there was a more important thing they had to do: the problem of distribution of spoils. The Northern Army has always had such a tradition. Under normal circumstances, the spoils of war are not handed over to the top leaders, such as the former Ed Stark and the current Robb Stark, for unified distribution. They believe that how much they can knock down depends on their own ability, and they have nothing to do with other guys who have no contribution. This is why Clay has such great prestige in the army. In fact, he only led his troops to win a few battles, but the problem is that he always wins, and all he grabs are good things. But this time, the 5,000 of them achieved greater results. Tens of thousands of prisoners were left there, and most of them were women that the gentlemen were very interested in. Can they not be impatient? Although the appearance of most savage women is not very good due to various reasons, there are always good-looking ones, right? Why can't you share it with me? Is the woman at home dissatisfied with taking another one back? Nonsense, this was given to me by Lord Clay Manderly. Do you understand the spoils of war? Are you all staring at these women? Tell me, how much do you want? Give me a number and let me see what you guys' appetite is. Clay glanced at the somewhat embarrassed Earl Glover with a half-smile. This guy came to see him today and showed him this report. In fact, he was reminding himself in a subtle way, "Boss, the brothers have been waiting for a long time. How do you divide it? Could you please tell me something?" These northern cavalry who followed Clay all the way here absolutely believed that Clay would give them what they wanted. Clay never hesitated in distributing the spoils. As the eldest son of White Harbor, he really didn't care about these pots and pans. Casting a sideways glance at the laughing Earl Glover, Clay joked, "Are you sure that I will divide them among you now, not to mention whether their waists can hold up, and I will start now? Are you afraid that some hot-tempered person will bite off your lifeblood?" Looking at the Earl of Deepwood Castle, whose face suddenly stiffened, Clay added the last sentence, "The trophies I took down don't have that stuff. If something is really lost, I don't have any new ones here for you to replace." After thinking about the way he went to check on the prisoners before, and the hateful looks from those women towards him who was dressed luxuriously, Queen Glover was a little chilled. Although she was a noble, she was still very strictly controlled at home. Suddenly there was an opportunity to hunt wild food, and as a great nobleman, he must be the first to pick one. Can't you pick out a good-looking one among tens of thousands of prisoners? I felt itchy in my heart, that was for sure. After all, this matter was endorsed by Clay Mandler. Okay, Master Clay, let's not fight their idea for the time being. After all, it's still more important, but sir, after they are all convinced, you see. Clay laughed and cursed, "Get out of here now, I won't miss you. I'll send it directly to your home. What do you think? I'll choose the strongest one for you, and I'll make sure to cure your back pain." The savage prisoners refused to obey, and even attacked the soldiers delivering food. A soldier was dragged in. If the people next to him hadn't reacted quickly, his life would have been at stake. Clay's handling of this matter is very simple. The soldiers under his command, well, they are all good. Those who were beaten, those who saved others, they all captured the savages' things and picked them out for themselves. Don't be too greedy. Take whatever you want. As for the small areas where trouble occurs, it's even simpler. Don't you like to eat? Okay, Clay will immediately cut off the confession with an order. If you want to eat, you can hand over everything you do. Clay will give you weapons, just your rotten wooden sticks. In front of all the savages, kill all the troublemakers. If you dare to survive, this you won't be able to eat. It's not that Clay is cruel, or that he is psychopathic. He uses heavy codes in troubled times. He must stabilize the situation at the Great Wall as soon as possible. Moreover, these tens of thousands of savage women are an important bargaining chip for him to use to bribe the northern cavalry. Although they all belong to their respective families, they have received many favors. With the straightforward character of the people from the north, they will definitely be grateful to Clay from the bottom of their hearts. Clay never asked that when he stood on the opposite side of the north in the future, they would always be on his side. After all, his wife, children were all in the fiefdoms of other big families. Clay just asked them not to go against him and just stay in his house honestly. Then Clay's efforts would not be in vain. Commander-in-Chief Mormont, the situation on the Great Wall is actually not complicated now. The wildlings have not dared to appear near the Great Wall for at least half a year, so I will not stay with you any longer. There are still many things for me to do in the south. In the commander's tower, Clay stood in front of the window, staring at the falling snowflakes outside, with his back to Jeor Mormont sitting in front of the fireplace, and said something lightly. This time, killing Mance Rayder and defeating the so-called 100,000-man army of the wildlings completely made the wildlings feel pain. Some time ago, Jon Snow took people out of the Great Wall to inspect a circle. Within 100 miles, one person, no trace of the savage could be seen. It can only be said that the effect is outstanding. The defensive pressure of the Great Wall suddenly weakened. Replenishment soldiers from various dungeons have also arrived at the Great Wall, restoring a wave of blood to the dilapidated Night Watch Legion. Now, at least the normal inspection work of the Ghost Forest can be guaranteed, and manpower can be spared to cut down the trees that are too close to the Great Wall. Previously, the Night Watch Corps was severely short of manpower and the savages were frequently active. The Ghost Forest had moved a considerable distance towards the Great Wall, which was actually very detrimental to the defense of the Great Wall. According to the records of the Night's Watch, when the Night's Watch was at its peak, standing on the top of the Great Wall, one could only vaguely see the outline of the Ghost Forest. Not like now, it has almost reached the foot of the Great Wall. But now, people have made up for it, and that timeless truth has come into play. If you want to be safe, get rich, first cut down the tree. I've been working on my thesis for the past 2 days. Sorry, I've been slow in writing. Ors Chapter 200. The beginning of the Battle of King's Landing. Time in this world will not stop for anyone. While Clay was busy dealing with a bunch of hungry guys in the north, a big drama was also going on in King's Landing, thousands of miles away in the south. The news that Lannister was about to be unable to hold on any longer was like a gust of wind, instantly blowing into the ears of the two Baratheon brothers. It's impossible to say that you don't feel itchy. The current situation is that Stannis and Renly, the two Baratheons, it doesn't matter whether they can catch the false King Joffrey or not. Who puts the butt first? Being in that chair comes first. So Stannis, who had been staying at sea without moving, finally landed from the shore near the Mud Gate with 10,000 people. It's not that Stannis doesn't want to bring more people, but he only has so many people. Dragonstone itself is sparsely populated, plus some Stormland nobles, a small number of royal nobles to support them, and people from the original royal fleet. Stannis only then did nice gather 10,000 people. Facing Renly's 80,000 troops, Stannis is naturally at a complete disadvantage, but it does not matter, because once he successfully sits on the Iron Throne, the vassals of the Baratheon family will not treat him hands-on. The facts are there, Robert is dead, and Joffrey is a scoundrel. No matter how you look at it, it is Stannis' turn to take the Baratheon throne. The inheritance law is clear and everyone knows it. However, Renly was made Duke of Storm's End by Robert and became the Lord of the entire Stormlands. In addition, he was a Baratheon himself and was particularly charming, so everyone followed him. But now, the real heirs have entered the city, sitting on the Iron Throne and proclaiming themselves king. They, Baratheon's vassals, are holding the banner of Baratheon to attack the other Baratheon on the throne. Doesn't this sound a bit rebellious? Your Majesty, this old lion Tywin is probably not very good anymore. We charged yesterday and held onto the Dragon Gate for a long time. We almost captured the Dragon Gate, but then the old lion went crazy. We just withdrew. The speaker was an earl who led troops under King Renly Baratheon. When the news of Lannister's failure reached Renly, who could not bear it, sent people to step up the siege. Intensity. The strength of the Lannister defense is indeed getting weaker day by day. Renly can see this from standing in the camp observing the battle situation, but it is helpless. After all, the Lannister still has an elite army of more than 20,000 people. In a short period of time, they cannot be eliminated inside. At this time, Stannis arrived. There was no other way. Renly was forced to stop the attack and sent 20,000 men to block the south to prevent Stannis from making a surprise attack on his camp. Renly originally didn't station anyone near the Mud Gate, because not far outside the Mud Gate is the docks of King's Landing, and the entire Blackwater Bay is under the control of Stannis. He sent people to set up a camp there, then caught between Lannister and Stannis. Although Renly did not know how to fight, his men were not fools. Lord Randyll Tarly firmly opposed this matter and convinced everyone present with a topographic map of King's Landing. As a result, the current form of King's Landing has become that Lannister is in the city, but the defense line is gradually shrinking, and many of the defensive weapons at the top of the city have been smashed and cannot play a role in defending the city. Without these things, as long as Renly's army ascends to the top of the city, it will immediately be a brutal hand-to-hand battle, attrition. Lannister would not dare to play like this with Renly, or he will be eaten alive. Renly's army surrounded the entire west, north, and southwest sides of King's Landing. Renly's army surrounded 6 of the 7 gates, leaving only the mud gate belonging to Stannis' troops. Renly never made a move against Stannis because he knew very well that the vassals below would not agree. It would be easy to say that the Lannister had been destroyed, but now, this is simply not possible. Stannis, on the other hand, has no such concerns. It's just that his troops are too weak. Renly sent 20,000 people to stop him. There is no way that he can lead a bunch of miscellaneous troops to break through Renly's camp. Just as the 3 parties were confronting each other, things suddenly changed, because the Lannister defenders at the Mud Gate seemed to have some communication with Stannis outside the city. So, what Duke Tywin means is that he will depose Joffrey's bastard's throne, and then open the mud door and let me enter the city to proclaim myself king. He will bow down to me and be loyal to me on the condition that his entire family will be spared, and they will be guaranteed the Western Realm. The position of protection? In the camp, Stannis stared at the little dwarf in front of him, shaking the letter in his hand with a strange look on his face. He didn't quite understand what Tywin Lannister was going to do. Dwarf, tell me, what is the purpose of your shrewd father sending you to me? If you really want to surrender, why don't you go to my good brother Renly? He has a much better reputation than my brother. In terms of prestige, Stannis Baratheon is still self-aware. He is very aware of his character flaws, so he cannot understand why Tywin Lannister chose to surrender to him. Tyrion, who was slightly taller than the long table, was wearing luxurious clothes embroidered with golden heroes, but his messy beard ruined the beauty. He looked at Stannis with a relaxed look on his face. You have 2 questions, Your Majesty. Tyrion shook his finger, even though Stannis still called him a duke, which was Stannis' title during Robert's time. Everyone around him glared at Tyrion, but Stannis' face remained unchanged. My answer to the first question is that my beloved father might want to use your hands to kill me. After all, he doesn't want to be accused of parricide. Second question, my father said this, let me learn from you. Tyrion adjusted his posture, walked towards the center of the tent with his hands behind his back, imitating Tywin Lannister's pace and tone, and said slowly, Stannis is like the smelly stone in the pit, but no matter how smelly the stone is, it is still heavy, and will not be repeated easily. And Renly is like the clouds in the sky. One moment it is blue sky and white clouds, and the next second there are dark clouds covering the city. Tyrion finished imitating his father's words, then spread his hands and got half a bottle of wine for himself in the wine glass that Stannis put on the table. He took a breath and drank up all the sour wine in one gulp. Stannis understood what he meant. He was saying that he was a hard-edged person. Once he agreed to Lannister's surrender, he would not touch them easily. Renly was a capricious guy. Even if Lannister opened the door, he would not touch them easily. The gate, there is no guarantee that there will be no Targaryen disaster. What they did will happen to them again more than 10 years later. It is impossible to say that they are not afraid. The city cannot be defended. Generals with a little experience know this. Nodding thoughtfully, Stannis continued to ask, Tyrion Lannister, it's not because you can't hold on because of your military strength. You can't hide this trick from me. With my brother and the skills of those delicate roses, Tywin will never be forced to surrender. To the point where there are other reasons, right? Tyrion grinned and didn't answer even a word, but in his heart he couldn't help but sigh that Stannis' judgment was accurate. Indeed, the reason why Lannister couldn't hold on in King's Landing was not because of the military at all. It's about how to feed the hundreds of thousands of mouths in this city. Yes, while Clay was busy running around Slaver's Bay, Dorne, the north and beyond the wall, the Lannister who had been holding on finally reached the point of exhaustion. Well, in terms of food. All the granaries in King's Landing will soon be exhausted. The little food in the city can be sold for exorbitant prices, and people have begun to starve to death. Under such circumstances, the Lannister cost of maintaining law and order in King's Landing suddenly became unacceptably high. Think about it, every time you patrol, a hand may stretch out from the darkness, and this hand holds a stained blade. The owner of the hand has a pair of hungry green eyes. In a very short period of time, the order in most places in the city was out of control. In order to get a bite to eat, the people of King's Landing did everything they could, while the golden robes who had been transferred to the city could only keep the rich and nobles in their homes. In this area, people here still have food, so the order is pretty good, but that's all. Every night, standing on the high platform of the Prime Minister's tower, Tyrion could see dots of sparks in King's Landing. That was because he was far away, and if he was close, it would be a blazing fire. It can be said that King Joffrey has actually lost control of King's Landing and most of his capital. Except for a few main roads and wealthy areas, the Golden Robes did not dare to go anywhere else. That is because Tywin Lannister, who kills more than 20,000 people without blinking an eye, is in the city. The hungry mob has some brains and does not have the courage to directly attack the army. Otherwise, the city will be completely in chaos. I didn't say anything. Stannies, you know better than me what kind of people live in King's Landing. Okay, I understand what you mean. I can let Tywin and you guys go, but Lannister can never keep the crown anymore. That brat must kneel at my feet. This is the bottom line. Yes, but my elder sister may not agree with it. But my dad has a clear mind, and I guess he can handle this matter just by pressing his head. In fact, the current situation is the same as when Clay and Melisandre were dealing with it. There were three parties confronting each other. The party with the initiative could form an alliance with any party, but this party did not dare to say no. Because once you refuse, it means that you don't want to cooperate with me, then I will cooperate with your competitor. We will open the Mud Gate tomorrow evening and let your army enter the city. However, after that, all our troops will try to break out. Since Joffrey is no longer the king, the Lannister family will no longer stay here. It's necessary to go down. Stannis was silent for a while, and the staff next to him were also silent. Frankly speaking, this actually posed a problem for them, because if Lannister ran away, why would Stannis, who only has 10,000 people, defend King's Landing? But the other way around is the same thing. Can you refuse? No, Stannis doesn't agree. This is killing the Lannister family. They turned around and formed an alliance with Renly. Anyway, they are all kneeling. I will kneel to whoever saves my life. Yes, I agree, but you must ensure that our army fully controls the city defense and takes over the 7 gates of King's Landing before breaking through. That's no problem. We're all planning to leave. Why are we still here? Then I hope you keep your promise. Otherwise, I will temporarily put aside the conflict with Renly and drag you Lannisters out of the Red Keep and kill them. You can kill them. Anyway, you can kill the Lannister in the Red Keep as you please. Except for my brother, you can do whatever you like with the rest. Stop making wisecracks here, Tyrion Lannister, and stay with me until my army enters the Mud Gate. Make a condition, give me enough good wine, and don't want Dorne's horse urine. Oh, by the way, find me a woman, otherwise I will suffocate to death. I can give you wine, but women, sorry, there are no women in my army. Tyrion Lannister left under the leadership of the soldiers, his groaning voice still lingering in the empty tent. Original and stubborn Stannis, your inability to adapt is really your biggest shortcoming in your life. Coming outside the tent, looking at the wall of King's Landing nestled like a giant beast, at the end of the line of sight, Stannis' black eyes reflected little bits of firelight. Are you stubborn? As long as I can ascend the throne, I am not stubborn. Tyrion Lannister, if you can live to see me, this is my concession to you. All those who stand in the way of me becoming king, shouldn't they all die? The low murmurs were shattered by the wind on the Blackwater River. Stannis looked to the right front, at the Red Keep built on Aegon's high hill. It was brightly lit and looked so dazzling in the dark night sky. A year ago, his brother died in this castle that was bright on the surface, but was actually filthy inside. Today, as his heir, Stannis has never felt so close to his brother's chair. Stannis thought of Renly. In fact, what pained him the most was the fact that Renly wore the crown. He could not forgive Renly for betraying him. After his brother Robert died, he spent the rest of his life trying to ascend the throne, but his own brother stood in front of him. Stannis Baratheon, His Majesty the King, was about to go off to the most important war in his life, but he didn't know how to face his younger brother. If Renly had a fight with him, would he order his death? Stannis didn't want to admit it, but a voice that annoyed him, kept telling him, he must do this. Let's sort out my thoughts. I've been under a lot of academic and work pressure lately. The author still doesn't have good time management, so I just try my best to write.
Thanks for joining Fanfiction Reader. If you enjoyed it, hit subscribe and come back for more fan-made adventures.